Good evening. This meeting is called to order. I'm Deputy Mayor Vicky Mink, and I'll be chairing tonight's council meeting. Mayor Henkinsky is at the Canadian Nuclear Association conference and is unable to attend tonight. Before we begin, I'll ask Director and our Fire Chief Williams to please go over the safety procedures. Thank you very much. Next, we'll move to a moment of silent reflection. And I don't have an announcement for this. I'll just ask everyone to have a moment of your thoughts. Thank you very much. And I'll move on to the land acknowledgement. The municipality of Port Hope exists on the lands of the Mississauga-Ashunaggwik traditional territory covered by the Williams Treaties. We honor and recognize First Nations peoples as right holders and stewards of the lands and waters on which we have the privilege to live, work, and play, including the Ganaraska Forest and River. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We commit to actions towards truth and reconciliation by recognizing the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, strengthening ties with the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, especially those who make their home in Port Hope, and learning from Indigenous ways of knowing and being. We do so by recognizing the past and working towards a shared future. I will ask for any pecuniary interest from Council, and I'm seeing none. So I'll move on to announcements and updates and recognition. Float your fanny. On behalf of myself and the entire Municipal Council, we send a heartfelt thank you to the incredible organizers, volunteers, staff, participants, vendors, sponsors, and enthusiastic spectators who made this weekend's event such a resounding success. Thank you to each and every one of you. The Gani spirit was alive and thriving in Port Hope, bringing together friends, families, and visitors to celebrate everything that makes our town so vibrant and welcoming. Events like these are a powerful reminder of what we can accomplish when we come together as a community. Thank you very much. Another update regarding the fire at the industrial chemical plant on April 9th, 2025. A fire at an industrial chemical plant in Port Hope required an extensive coordinated response involving 40 firefighters, 14 apparatus, and mutual aid from neighboring fire departments. With support from Cameco, environmental agencies, and other partners, the blaze was contained, avoiding a potentially severe incident. I'd like to recognize the exceptional leadership and dedication of our fire chief and his fire team, which has been crucial in ensuring the safety of our residents and mitigating risks to our community. Thank you very much. And I'll ask if any council members have any announcements or updates related to municipal business they'd like to share. Councillor Clare.
Thank you. I would like to extend an invitation to all members of the community to attend Port Hope's inaugural Sustainability Expo, which will take place at Port Hope High School on Sunday, April 27th from 10 a.m. through 3 p.m. This all-ages event is being organized by the Environmental Advisory Committee and is bringing together businesses, local organizations, and individuals to showcase local initiatives and share ideas for how we can all make sustainable choices in our own lives and advance our sustainable future as a community. There'll be lots of hands-on activities along with opportunities to learn about a variety of topics from electric vehicles to sustainable gardening to home retrofits, a little something for everyone. Details are available on our municipal events calendar, and I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you very much. Any other updates from council? Okay, so I have one. I attended the Conservation Ontario Annual General Meeting yesterday in Vaughan. We approved the 2025 council representatives, the budget, the audited financials. There were several key updates relevant to our watershed, including progress on source water protection, climate resiliency, and the new initiative focused on marginal lands and agriculture. We also reviewed permitting and compliance trends across the province, as well as ongoing input into legislation such as carbon storage and draining regulations. There was also a facilitated discussion on Conservation Ontario's strategic positioning, focused on strengthening our collective voice in rural and provincial policy. And that was, it was the second year I attended, and it's always a great discussion. Okay, if there's no more updates from council, we'll move on to delegations. It's now time for delegations. We have 4 delegations on the agenda tonight. One of the delegations has requested extra time, and we have granted this request. Due to the number of delegations tonight, I ask presenters to please be mindful of the time limit. Our clerk will ring the bell when you have 1 minute left in your presentation, and ring the bell twice when your time is up. When you come up, just a reminder to press the purple button. And first up is Jennifer Hess, Manager, Investment Services, Municipal Finance Officers Association, and Keith Taylor, Chief Investment Officer, One Investment, regarding municipal investing under the Municipal Act. I now welcome Jennifer Hess, Manager, Investment, and Keith Taylor, and Chief Investment Officer. You have 10 minutes to speak, and go ahead and please press the purple button.
I should know this, Shrishma. Yeah, Shrishma and I used to work together at the town of Whitby. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Mink. Thank you for having us tonight. We're actually here tonight speaking with you as a result of a conversation that we had with your mayor back at the Roma conference earlier this year. She was able to catch our presentation at that conference and suggested it might be beneficial for us to come and provide a very high-level discussion on an overview of investing for municipalities as it stands under the Municipal Act. It is a lot of information to cover in 10 minutes, so we'll be doing a very cursory glance, but we are always happy to work with staff or to come back and speak with council in more depth at a later time. So who is One Investment? We are a not-for-profit organization that is dedicated to serving the Ontario municipal sector. We have been established with a partnership between LAS, which is the business arm of AMO, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, and CHUMS, a subsidiary of the Municipal Finance Officers Association. We currently do manage about 4.7 billion of municipal holdings as of the end of February, and about 40% of all Ontario municipalities are currently investing through One Investment in some shape or fashion. Additionally, beyond the products that we do offer that are fully compliant with the Municipal Act, we received in 2018 an exemption from the Ontario Securities Commission, and that allows us to provide investment advice and education to municipalities at no cost to yourselves. And on staff, we do have a CFA with over 30 years of investment experience, as well as CPA with varied municipal experience, as well as municipal policy expertise to bring for you. The Municipal Act spells out what municipalities can and cannot do for their investments. There are really 2 streams under the Municipal Act: the legal list and the prudent investor stream. And we'll be touching very briefly on both of these tonight. Overall, the governance for One Investment is overseen by our board of our One Investment board, and on that board sits 9 municipal municipal people. I knew I was going to trip over that word tonight, and 1 industry expert. The products that we offer under the legal list are additional advice comes from our investment advisory committee, which is comprised of investment sector experts and a legal representative and a lawyer to make sure that we are fully compliant with the Municipal Act. And for the prudent investor side of the house, that work is overseen by the One Joint Investment Board. And on that board, there are 9 investment industry experts and 3 municipal treasurers.
Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I just want to touch briefly, thank you, on the investment products we have available under the legal list. These are currently available to all municipalities without joining Prudent Investor. We have these 4 products. The first one is the high interest savings plan, which is a bank account that provides competitive interest rates. It's backed by CIBC and Scotia. And then we have 3 portfolios that municipalities co-invest in. 2 are related to Canadian fixed income, and one is gives exposure to Canadian equities. The 2 that are noted here with asterisk, the Canadian corporate bond and Canadian equity portfolio, give investment exposures you can't get on your own. There are limitations what the municipality can invest in on their own. And because of the way that one investment's written into the legislation, we can offer these exposures.
When we talk about the difference between legalist and prudent, we're really talking Canada versus the world. The legalist, as it stands, is a very select list of Canadian investments that municipalities can partake in. When you move to the prudent investor stream, it really does open up the world of investments, the worlds of investment types, but along with that comes another level of governance. The One Joint Investment Board that one has been established by the Ontario municipalities currently acts as the Municipal Services Board for each municipality that it services, and it operates in accordance with the Municipal Act. The overseeing prudent investor governance model, I should note, currently there are 18 municipalities in the province that have adopted the prudent investor standard. 15 of them are with One Investment and our One Joint Investment Board. So under the prudent investor governance model, it's up to the municipality to adopt and maintain an investment policy that must be reviewed annually. And then the investment board or joint investment board would take that investment policy and put together and approve an investment plan that meets the municipality's investment policy as well as their investment horizons. We take a look at a simple story of a municipality in Eastern Ontario that was looking at putting in investments in this year. It's a rural township, around 4,000 people. Annual tax base of about 125,000 is equal to a 1% tax levy. And they were downloaded a highway from the province. Their main north-south connection was downloaded to them, and they're now going to, in their asset management plan, have to pay for the maintenance of this highway. And they currently do not know how they're going to do it. They did decide that they had initially about 2.5 million of reserves available for investing, because they needed this money to grow, because the bill to maintain this highway far exceeded that amount. They also then, in their model, said, well, if we put aside $250,000 each year, how much would that be at the end of the time when we need these funds in 10 years? So if they were just to set these funds aside, they have about 4.75 million to be invested. But how could this possibly grow? We took a look at the past historical 10-year legal list return, the 10-year historical prudent investor return, as well as how much money, when you look at where prime has been sitting, high or low for the high interest savings account. So an annual return in legal list would bring approximately 4.7%. Prudent would be about 5.2%. And the high interest savings account would bring, on average over the last 10 years, anywhere between 1.6 and 2.5. And hypothetically, as with Prudent Investor, you're able to diversify your portfolio to a far greater extent, and then you're also able to reduce the risk. So the models that we were looking at assumed under Legalist a 40% allocation to equity, and under the Prudent Investor standard, that would drop to 30%. So the results, when we take a look at the hypothetical modeling, indicated that over 10 years, 1.93 of non-tax revenue could be gained from the Prudent Investor model. It drops down to 1.75 under Legalist, and a bank account would bring up to 186,000, looking at historical rates. But again, historical rates do not guarantee future performance. When you visually look at this, you can see the difference between a Legalist and the Prudent Investor stream, and you can also see on the graph where a 1% tax levy is sitting for this municipality. Overall, why do municipalities need to consider possibly investing? Municipalities have been working towards their asset management plans, which need to have a financial component in this summer. A financial plan on how they're going to maintain the existing assets within the municipality. Some municipalities are looking at growth and how they're going to pay for growth, recognizing that the new Tax revenue coming in from assessment does not cover the municipal needs in a growth situation. So investing can be a valuable tool that treasurers can use in the province to offset the tax levies. And regardless of whether a municipality chooses the legal list regime or the prudent investor standard, both provide viable options for municipalities. And with that, we have the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much for your delegation. Is there any questions from council? Council S.
Yes, I got a couple questions, and thank you very much for the presentation. I know you didn't have much time, and it's a lot to unpack in a very short period of time. How do you cover your expenses as an organization?
So as we are for not-for-profit, so there is nominal fees on our legal list and on our prudent investor, and they are there to cover the costs of running the business. But again, I would prove that our oversight is municipal representation on our boards. So they are there to make sure that our fees are as low as possible. In fact, in 2020, we ended up reducing the fees on one of our portfolios because we determined it was making too much. So where we do not make commissions, we do not make a profit, we are there basically to cover costs.
Okay, my second and last question is that I know that people get nervous when you step outside of the bond and the tried and true interest rate from the bank scenarios and say, oh, equities, and all of a sudden red flags go up, and you use Canadian equities. Which are the biggies you use there?
I'll let
Yeah, sure. Under the legal list, we have an external manager that invests in a portfolio of Canadian equities. They tend to invest the portfolio with to try to downside the risk in the portfolio. They have less exposure to the commodity sector, whether it be oil or mining, which tend to be more volatile. But to your point, yes, there is significantly more risk involved with equity investing, and we would encourage any of our clients not to look at it unless they have a long investment horizon. And that's why we do provide the advice. We do try to build a portfolio that's appropriate for the municipality. So if you don't have short-term money or you don't have long-term money or enough of it, we would guide you away from that. But yeah, with the growth potential of equities, it's one way to make your money work for you. And over the long time, if you can assume a little bit of risk, you can have much better returns.
Well, we do have some long-term money available to us that we can leave. And when I look at people like CPCN, Royal Bank, some of the better banks, I don't think that I'd be risk adverse to putting money into those type of things, and sort of broadening our horizons. That's my thought on it, anyways. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council? Okay, well, thank you very much for your delegation.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, Councillor.
Deputy Mayor, I'd like to make a motion on this presentation,
Sure, go ahead.
and I provided it to Shrishma, so if
Okay.
you wouldn't mind reading it out.
Certainly. So the motion would require a mover and seconder. Councillor Andrews has indicated that he will move the motion. The language of the motion is as follows: that the presentation from one investment under the Municipal Act be received, and that council direct staff to undertake further due diligence with one investment to explore the prudent investor regime through one joint investment board and report back to council with a final recommendation.
Thank you. And with that, do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Clare. Is there any discussion from council? And Director Baxter has a comment?
Certainly, I could take a minute just to speak to that. So this is something that's certainly already on our radar. It does provide an opportunity and one that should be explored. I do note it isn't, it is a bit of a process, right? So we need to completely update our investment policy. We also need to come up with a strategy, right? Looking right now, we likely want to have a separate, another additional investment account for some of our investments. We do have some long-term funds, as Councillor Andrews pointed out, and I think if over the long term we can have a higher return, I think that's favorable. Certainly, there is more opportunity though for some variability in that. So I think some strategy around, how we use the money that we earn from that, because what we don't want to do is have, more of a good year and say have additional funds for tax reduction, and then a year after, have the market go down and now we have less, and then you're going to see less stabilization in our property taxes, as an example. So it does require a little bit of a thinking, right? We're already doing the legal list option is what we're on now, right? So government bonds. So there's the potential to move to one investment and do something the same thing, really, or move and be able to take advantage of some of the other types of investments. So there's the investment policy part of it. There's certainly a strategy of how we would go and set it up to do. Then there's the actual transferring of the funds. And then we have accounting reporting standards, which I know are not everyone's exciting thing to talk about. But last year, those changed, right? So, that was a whole process, and we didn't even change our investments. And that's something else, especially if we're now moving more to equity-based, that we would need to do. The good part is one investment, certainly would be supportive along those lines, but they're ultimately not the ones who have to actually put them together and finalize them. So there's quite a bit involved, and I do point out that right now my two main people, my team who would be doing that, are both on maternity leave. So certainly it's something we're looking to pursue anyways, but this would be outstanding for an extended period of time. And I know certainly, we try to be as responsive as we can to direction from council. So I do just point that out. We also just received direction at the last meeting for a different project. So, stepping back a little bit, I'd suggest we go through the strategic plan process, identify what our priorities are, and then, we can then choose where we're going to allocate our resources based on that. And regardless of that, this is something that can be left with staff to pursue when we have capacity. So not to preclude you from passing this, but I haven't had the opportunity to have a discussion with any council members about it. And so I just wanted to provide that input, and we'll look to your direction.
Thank you. And just for clarification, there was no timeline that was put on this, correct?
That is my understanding, yes.
Thank you. And Councillor Less?
And David, Director Baxter is correct. There's a lot of things that would have to go into this, but in terms of burden, all the burden shouldn't fall on pure accounting practice. It is more.
Public investment in colleges has declined 20% over the past 17 years. Both the Provincial Auditor General and the Provincial Blue Ribbon Panel both noted this risk to Ontario college sector with the overdependence on international tuition, and recognized the greater risk to Ontario's rural colleges, where the cost to deliver in less populated areas of the provinces are much more expensive. This graph shows just how far behind Ontario is from the rest of Canada on post-secondary grant funding. Ontario is roughly half of the second worst funded province, Ontario, and a third of Saskatchewan. And as we start what could be a trade war with the United States, Ontario is quickly becoming horribly positioned to develop and retain a workforce needed to be competitive and productive. In actual fact, we are contracting on that ability, especially in this region of the province. So our response to the challenge, when we look at and we stare at fiscal 25-26, so that's the fiscal we just started, we anticipate a $40 million reduction in tuition revenue for this year, and more to follow the years coming. This is not a one-time loss, but an annual going forward. This revenue historically covered the capital, it built the Port Hope campus, covered upfront costs for new programming, updated lab equipment, subsidized the cost of delivery for domestic programming, and ensured our regions had access to a variety of programs. In response, we've had to make some very gut-wrenching decisions. 30% reduction in our post-secondary programming, 20% reduction in our workforce. We've closed our Toronto campus. There is no new capital, and we've gone to austerity measures when it comes to expenses. Our word is our bond, and 2 years ago, we made a commitment to Port Hope in Northumberland County. My earlier slide said we believe in the potential of more rural centers of our province and that they deserve to have the right to have a strong post-secondary system. In the past 2 years, we've shown our commitment where we've created a transportation system between Cobourg and Port Hope to move student mobility between cities. We've brought cultural programming to Port Hope, including an evening with Margaret Atwood. We've brought the Loyalist Speaker Series here. We've done the revival of the Summer Arts Experience Program, which has 12 program courses running this summer in Port Hope. We've made investments in the real estate in Port Hope. We've invested $10 million in our new campus, our downtown campus, and we purchased a residence facility on top of that to support our new students that come in. We've worked with our local, from an economic standpoint, we've worked with our local economy and our Port Hope businesses to make sure that they get all the catering, the office rentals, and the services that we need in our region. Loyalist also encourages student spending in our region through discounted programs with the Port Hope Chamber of Commerce. We've been sponsoring events. We sponsor the local community events, including the Cultivate Festival, the Port Hope Chamber of Commerce, and the AI in Action event that happened recently. And we also were one of the prime donors to make sure that the Port Hope Walk-in Clinic was reestablished. Once it was reestablished, we brought our applied research folks in and did a research project to collect data to show the impact of the clinic, and that will allow you to advocate for future funding as things go forward. Lastly, we're also working to become your HH&R engine for healthcare, workers from nurses to PSWs to MRT technicians to paramedics and everything in between. We're working harder with your regional partners to get students placed in the region, so upon graduation they stay, and we've launched our first PSW cohort this spring to run in Port Hope. I'll also state that we have 2 brand new programs going to our board for approval this week that are designed specifically for Port Hope to align with your current and future workforce needs. We are committed, but that doesn't mean there are no impacts to the region with the financial challenges facing the system. Loyalist is a community college, and our tentacles within our community are wide and deep. Unfortunately, this means that not just Loyalist will be feeling the pain of these cuts. As I mentioned, we have new programs developed that will shortly be headed to the ministry for approval. With current underfunding and needing capital to launch these new programs, it may be extremely difficult to get them going. Colleges need surpluses to launch programs and invest. Without the needed provincial funding, growth of the Port Hope campus will be very challenging. With the recent RRCC ruling that we've had to suspend programs designed for international students. This means reduction of over 100 post-secondary students in this region this fall. These students filled part-time jobs, and market data shows that they spent well over $500,000 annually in the local economy, which will all be lost. To demonstrate the impact of Loyalist College on a regional economy, the impact cuts Loyalist is making that I talked about earlier will reduce the regional gross product by 1%. This covers Lennox and Addington, Prince Edward County, Hastings, and Northumberland. And lastly, I do understand the desire to keep tuition low and make it affordable to the taxpayer. However, this is quickly turning into a benefit for those that live in larger cities, as only those locations will have the variety of programming for youth to take locally. Look at what happened in Perth, Lindsay, Brockville, and Cornwall. With these smaller locations now offering only a handful of programs if they weren't closed. Rural Eastern Ontario applicants to colleges may be looking at a 400% increase in educational costs because they need to leave home. And our ability to expand and grow in Port Hope is significantly hampered. We also know that when our youth leave home, they're really hard to get them back. The other option, and the one that's most concerning to me, is that post-secondary education will no longer be affordable for many, as even attending a local college is fiscally challenging. Keeping tuition frozen is quickly becoming a benefit for only those in large metropolitan centers and this only amplifies the urban-rural disparity. As I finish, I just want to say that we are still continue to be committed to our campus here in Port Hope, and we will do everything we can to maintain and ultimately grow. However, no business can survive forever running on 2015 revenue streams. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your delegation. So before I open it up for questions from council, just for myself, just for my own comfort level and transparency, if the conversation goes anything pecuniary in that direction, please let me know in advance so I can remove myself. But so just before I open it up to others, I just want to share my own story and my own thoughts. So some of you may know that I do teach part-time at Loyalist in Belleville, and just today, I had an assignment from a class in communications, the last class of the year, and they were making recommendations to their community. That was part of the assignment as a report, just much like what we get here in council. And they all did a fantastic job. And one class actually made a recommendation hypothetically to Belleville, which I thought was fantastic and inspired by. And I asked for their permission to bring that recommendation here to Port Hope, which I hope to bring as a notice of motion later. The reason I bring this up is because I think having community colleges in our community, especially small towns and rural communities, is vital. And it's a two-way relationship. The college is definitely helping our own community and having access to post-secondary education, but those students are also contributing in very many ways, sometimes unknowingly, to changes within our own community. And this example I shared is one example where those students were not expecting that perhaps they are going to make a change here in Port Hope with their assignment, but here we are. So I thank you for your presentation. I think it's absolutely critical that our post-secondary educations at the college level remain in our rural communities and small towns. Thank you very much. And any other comments from council? Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you very much. Mark, I remember when the very first times you spoke, you had made the comment that you take the role of community college very seriously because you truly weave it into the community. It's not about campuses, it's about being in the fabric of the community. And what you folks have done and continue to do, I think is exceptional. The loss that we're going to feel because of what's going on at the federal and the provincial level is going to be quite damaging, not only to Port Hope, but all community college communities. And so I appreciate you raising awareness of this and bringing it forward. I want to thank you for all you've done and continue to do for this community. I would say to community members in the gallery and anyone who's watching, if this is striking a chord, contact your provincial and federal elected officials and state what you're feeling. Because by defunding or changing the streams or making it difficult for post-secondary education, making it less accessible, is going to damage everybody.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Less.
Well, you don't have to sell me on community college because way back when I went to one, and it was called Ryerson, and I had a choice of going to university and taking the theory of business, or going to Ryerson and get my hands dirty at a very early level. So I'm 100% sold. What I don't understand is I keep hearing politicians talk about the feds, the province, about how important training is, and how we're short in medical, we're short in trades, we're short everywhere, and yet they cut funding. And when I read through your presentation, I'm looking for the very last slide, and I didn't expect questions. I thought there would be an ask of some type there, but you stated, I think, implicitly you're asking.
Yeah, I think the ask and I make with everybody is it's just voice. I think the more people that are aware and the more people that can lend their voice, the better. That's all I can ask.
Thank you. And Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you very much. If there's nothing else from council, I do have an alternate motion that I would like to put forward.
Thank you. I just want to make one comment on what Councillor Les said is I agree with you. I think it was 1967, Scarborough Centennial College opened the first campus in Warden Woods. less than 6 decades later, we're falling apart. Why are we going in that direction? It makes no sense for our post-secondary education to be at this point. So thank you for that point. And go ahead, Councillor Todd.
Thank you very much. And Shrishma, I think you've got a rather lengthy, do you want to read this out for it? Yeah, sure. Okay, all right. Excuse me. So whereas Loyalist College is a cornerstone institution in the municipality of Port Hope, providing quality post-secondary education, training, and workforce preparation to meet the needs of local economies. And whereas Loyalist College's contributions extend beyond Belleville, directly benefiting the municipality of Port Hope and surrounding areas through its programs, graduates, and partnerships that support local innovation, community service, and workforce development. And whereas the provincial funding model for post-secondary institutions, including rural colleges like Loyalist College, fails to adequately address the unique needs of rural communities, limiting their ability to uphold academic excellence, provide comprehensive student support services, and drive regional economic growth. And whereas federal and provincial government funding caps negatively impact institutions like Loyalist College by restricting their ability to offer accessible, high-quality education to all students and sustain programs that attract and retain both local and international talent essential for meeting labor market demands. And whereas the municipality of Port Hope recognizes that strong support for post-secondary institutions like Loyalist College is vital for ensuring the long-term success of students, the regional economy, and the broader community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of Port Hope strongly supports Loyalist College as a key educational institution serving the municipality of Port Hope and surrounding regions, recognizing its pivotal role in providing high-quality education and workforce development opportunities. 2, yeah, I'm in it for the long haul. Yeah, do I still have 10 minutes? 2, expresses concern over provincial funding models that threaten the sustainability of essential programs and services at Loyalist College, particularly in rural settings where educational institutions are critical for local economic growth. 3, calls on the provincial government to revise Ontario's funding model to better reflect the unique challenges faced by rural colleges like Loyalist College, ensuring equitable access to resources necessary for student success. 4, urges the federal government of Canada to recognize the significant contributions of international students to Canada's economy and society by implementing policies that enhance their academic experience, social integration, and financial stability. 5, advocates for a full review of operating grants and tuition fee structures that account for inflationary pressures and rising operational costs faced by post-secondary institutions. 6, requests both provincial and federal governments take decisive action to remove barriers and provide targeted support for post-secondary institutions like Loyalist College that serve rural communities. Be it further resolved that this resolution be forwarded to Prime Minister Mark Carney, Premier Doug Ford, the Minister of Colleges, Universities, Research Excellence and Security, the Honourable Nolan Quinn, the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship of Canada, the Honourable Rachel Bendayan, Northumberland Peterborough South Member of Parliament Philip Lawrence, Northumberland Peterborough South Member of Provincial Parliament Honourable David Piccini, the Eastern Ontario Wardens Caucus, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, the Ontario Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade, and the Board of Governors at Loyalist College.
Thank you. Is that all?
Second chapter.
Okay, and with that, may I please have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Les. Is there any discussion from Council? Councillor Clare.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to. Press the button. I'm quite happy to support this motion. Thank you for bringing it forward, Councillor Todd. For me, it's especially with regards to the importance of workforce development programs that are critical to our local economy, being accessible to students here in rural settings, and on the basis of equity for rural communities and being able to pursue their education without having to move to larger urban centers or commute unreasonably long distances to access those programs. I would suggest one small amendment, though, that is just apparently we are now in Northumberland Clark, as we've all become aware during this federal election, as opposed to our old riding name.
There we go.
Thank you for this.
No problems? Okay.
That's okay, just to type, okay. Councillor Adam.
Thank you. I appreciate all the hard work put into it, but I haven't had the opportunity to really read it over. So would you mind reading it again for us all? I don't want to make a decision that I'm not comfortable with. So
Well, the second reading actually goes to song. So I have.
Okay, any other comments from council? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, so I'll ask all in favor, and that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And next up, our third delegation is Robert Fishlock, Save Our Trees, regarding campaign to pause the residential component of the PHAI and institute a new approach to residential LLRW cleanups. I now welcome Robert Fishlock, Save Our Trees, regarding the campaign to pause residential component of the PHAI and institute. Mr. Fishlock, you have 10 minutes to speak. Please press the purple button.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor and members of council, for hearing me this evening. Just to move this forward, do I just press this here? Okay, got it. Is the microphone not on? How's that? Thank you, everybody. As I was introduced, I'm Robert Fishlock. I'm the chairperson for Save Our Trees. And I think most people are familiar with what we do and our mandate. But simply put, it's to protect the natural heritage of Port Hope. And over the last couple of years, the biggest threat to our natural heritage, in our opinion, is the Port Hope Area Initiative. Here's a few scenes. I'm not going to spend too much time because I'm sure everybody's seen the different work sites around the municipality where trees have to be removed and the low-level radioactive waste is being moved to the waste disposal facility at roughly Toronto Road and the 401. The part of the project that we're most concerned with is the residential component. I don't think anyone ever argued that what are known as the major sites, like the former Highland Drive landfill site, Chematron Lagoon, and others, needed to be remediated because of their size. And the fact is that they're logistically relatively easy to remediate and excavate, and they don't impact that much on the neighbors. But the residential component was clearly completely underestimated by the early planners for this project in terms of the logistics of working in and around existing neighborhoods, people living their lives. And the fact is that particularly most of the neighborhoods in the southern portion of Ward 1 in particular have a very mature tree canopy, which is unfortunately in the way. Some of you know I worked for almost 10 years for ACL and CNL on the project, and I know that as the details of the project roll forward and a lot of the testing investigations were done of the work sites, it was a big revelation for a lot of the contractors and the advisors that all these trees existed in Port Hope. Many of the people running CNL came from American companies who were associated with nuclear sites in the western parts of the United States, which is largely a semi-desert or desert area. And it was a complete surprise when they were toured around Port Hope as to the beauty in the summertime and the springtime of the lush, mature trees and vegetation that we enjoy. And it was like, oh my God, you know, what's going to happen? And the Alexander Ravine area was one of the big revelations where the municipality owns property. There's a huge hillside of very mature trees, and they potentially would have had to have been removed if the municipality hadn't agreed to a special circumstance. I want to take you back a little bit in terms of the context of why at this time we're here tonight to call for a pause on the residential component of the cleanup and a rethink and a rescoping of the cleanup process. The scope of the PHEI exploded between 2001 and 2025. I have in my hand here today the environmental assessment document published in 2006, which followed after 6 years of planning and preparing for the what I'll call the physical component of the cleanup. And at that time, there's very little mention of a significant impact on the community of the cleanup, which, you know, for most of us who have seen what's happened in the last few years in particular, if you go to neighborhoods like King Street and Shooter, Alexander Street, Smith Street, and the streets down just north of the railway tracks from Cameco, it's hard to believe that it wasn't given more discussion. In my view, it was potentially deliberately under mentioned. We all understand that cleaning up contaminated soil is a good thing for the environment, but the irony and the disconnect, which often people are faced with when they ask why, you know, their backyard needs to be dug up, is that when they ask about, well, what about the health risks? I've been here for 10 or 20 years. Oh, well, there's no health risk. The Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission has published documentation to substantiate that there is no evidence of any health risk from this low-level radioactive material. However, back at around 2000, when the legal agreement was signed between this municipality and the federal government, there was a lot of political concerns about the legacy and the impact it had on the image and reputation of Port Hope. And I don't belittle that. There were elements in this community that you know, suggested you couldn't believe the government when it said there was no threat. And so a decision was made to proceed with a cleanup. But the cost estimate at that time was $230 million, and it was felt it was a 10-year project. And that was what was assessed in the environmental assessment at that early time. Well, it's been increased a couple of times, and today the budget is now $2.6 billion, and there's no guarantee that that will be the final budget. The number of residential sites that were understood to have contaminated material has increased from around 300 to 1,200 and potentially growing. And the other big part of the residential aspect of the cleanup was the discovery of the actual volume on residential sites. And I know this council is aware of the arsenic issue, that it shouldn't have been a surprise, but it was a surprise when they did the testing around the municipality, that when you leave a pile of contaminated material the size of my fist in the ground for over half a century, water goes through that contamination and spreads it into the adjacent soils. And you've heard in presentations from CNL how the actual volume of material that now has to be removed has increased exponentially. And no surprise, the ACL, which is responsible for the cleanup at the federal level, is looking for ways to try and manage the actual cost of the cleanup. And that's one of the reasons why they proposed to change the arsenic cleanup criteria, which our organization supports. But I have to tell you, I've come to the conclusion that that's not going to solve Port Hope's problem. In fact, it's quite likely they still have not yet initiated, to my knowledge, the formal application to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to change the criteria. And it's been delayed now for almost 5 years, that it's quite likely that won't be approved anyway. And so we're here to propose, and we're looking for the support of the municipality, principally through working with your Environmental Services Director, Kyle, who I've got to learn to work with, who apparently isn't here today, that he's doing a really good job, and he's I think I'm really optimistic about working with him. But we have to stop the disruption. It's just too much, and I don't think it's necessary. So that's why we're calling for a new approach, and that's why we sent a letter to the Minister of Natural Resources, the presidents of ACL and CNL, which I believe you all have from earlier at the end of March, and we're appealing for a review of alternative ways to finish off the residential component of the project. And so in the meantime, we want to pause all the work that can be paused, certainly the work that hasn't been started. I know this council has seen some of the maps that CNL has for
work that will be scheduled over the next few years. And we've only seen the tip of the iceberg, quite frankly, in Port Hope. And that has been known for some time with CNL and ACL. But I can tell you, when the environmental assessment process was engaged, they had no maps, no idea. As I said, maybe 300, it's like a few paragraph mention that, oh yes, and there'll be residential cleanups, which was always a sort of almost a footnote to the cleanup of the major sites. It just didn't get much of attention. Internally, it's referred to as small scale sites, but the joke within the project was small scale sites, but big problem in terms of how we're going to execute it. And I don't think that's any secret. That's been shared. And you can see how long, if you go along Bramley Street, there's two sites I can think of. One is right across from the sushi restaurant. The other one's further down where they've been digging for, well, the one at the sushi restaurant's been going on for years. And it's such a small property. I don't even know where they're bringing the soil out. But it's just become very disruptive to the residents, and the trees have been removed. So we'd like to see if an independent review, but quite frankly, any review internally of alternative approaches to complete the cleanup. We have an idea. Our idea is based upon I'll just stop for a moment before I get to it. This is a slide that's been shown to this council. I don't know how many people here today have seen it, but this was done for the purposes of showing the positive effects of a criteria change. When I saw this, it was one of the first times you would see a bird's eye view of how many, the size of the areas that would be impacted by the cleanup. The blue colored one on the left is what would be affected by the current cleanup criteria, and the orange colored one shows how the area reduces, but it's still a very significant area that's going to be affected by the cleanup work. So what really drives a lot of private property owners to participate in the cleanup, because they do have the option to say no, is that if they don't take advantage of the project now, they will be responsible for the material into the future. And there's this arbitrary cleanup deadline, which is once the federal government is finished, it will have nothing more to do with Port Hope. And I know this is a problem for the municipality in dealing with its infrastructure on road allowance. There has always been a program for dealing, which was known as the Construction Monitoring Program. I would suggest it be renamed and reinvigorated to deal with ongoing cleanup, and that there be no requirement to clean up work right away, and that material would be removed when construction activities take place on the property. So that's what we're proposing. There's an existing program that can be built on by CNL, and we're asking for the municipality to support CNL and ACL and the powers that be in Ottawa to pursue that option and to minimize the impact on our municipality and to stop scenes like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Now I'll open up to questions from council. Les, go ahead.
Yeah, you said a couple things here that are true. The study showed in 2006 it was understated as to the complexity, but it's there. Like understated or not, it's there. And the reason the sites have increased from 300 to 1,200 is because it's there. It's not fictitious. They got to get it, or somebody's got to get it. Now, I agree with review, but not pause. I got a call from a very concerned citizen today that lives. He's got Clayton Lane behind him, and it is full of arsenic, and it's not the naturally recurring kind. It's from the plant, and every time a car goes by and kicks up dust, he's afraid for his grandchildren. He said, "There isn't a tree in this whole community that I wouldn't take down to save my grandchildren." So you're asking us to pause when there's stuff there that is dangerous, and it's surfacey, just like at the Lions Park. Big hue and cry. We're going to take down all these trees. This stuff was so close to the surface, you couldn't walk on it. So we got it cleaned up. We planted new trees. We just can't pause a project. I agree that, let's review it. Let's get this arsenic level changed because we're chasing arsenic all over the place. But it's there and it's got to be cleaned up. And if you don't want a tree taken down in your property, don't take it down. Pardon?
Sorry, I'll just call order. Sorry, there's no comments we'll have a comment period. I just want to make sure we follow.
Anyways, that's.
Can I just respond briefly to?
Well, we're going to have council comment first. Yeah. Thanks. Go ahead, Claire.
I think you raised some good points this evening. I certainly will be reflecting on this ask. I think one of the challenges that we face when it comes to this issue is that we made a decision as a community a very long time ago about the idea of the project as a whole. And for the most part now, we're looking at it piecemeal, property by property by property, including as individual property owners, right, who are looking at it from the perspective of our particular properties. And I think I've said this before on many occasions. I think that has led to us failing to see the forest for the trees because we think we're talking about individual trees. And what we're talking about is our tree canopy, which is a very different thing. Removing one tree is something very different than the catastrophic loss of tree canopy and all of the ripple effects that has for our ecosystem and enjoyment of this space as a community. So I think you raised some good points. I'm certainly not prepared to make any decision, I think recommendation, in terms of taking up a recommendation this evening. But if it's okay with my colleagues, I will propose an alternative wording to the motion. I'd like to see this referred back to staff. I know you're already dealing with Director Kyle, but I'd also like to see this referred to the Environmental Advisory Committee.
Thank you. So before you put any motion, I'll just ask if anybody else from council has a comment. Councillor Adam.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for coming and thank you for everybody. I know that there's a large group of people that are here in support. So that's a big ask. Let's be honest, that's a big ask. I have not had the opportunity to read that 2006 environmental assessment. I would never make an emotional decision. I'm only going to make an educated decision. So I'm asking you, would you mind sending me a copy of that 2006 environmental assessment so I can read it over, please?
Yeah, let's see. I can get it one way or the other. I'll copy it or whatever, but for sure I will.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions or comments? Councillor Todd.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, I only have two comments. I'm very curious to hear about what the alternatives are, and certainly the one that you proposed. So I look forward as we move forward to hearing more about it. I know some of this conversation's already been had, and sort of what the ramifications are. What does stick out to me when we talk about a full stop is I know right now we have choices. People can choose to have their property remediated or not, and I fully hear what you're saying about the pressure to have it done, because I think there are a lot of people who have felt that if I don't do it now, like I'm in trouble. So I'm wondering how those two are going to go together later on, because if we can still have a choice, or some people are like, I actually do want mine done. I think that's an important thing to be able to offer people. But similar to what other people are saying, I'll stay curious as we go, because the more we can minimize the impact this is having on the community, the better off we're going to be.
Thank you. And is there anything else from council? And Councillor Claire, did you have another comment or motion?
Yeah, so I'd like to make the motion that the delegation from Robert Fishblock representing Save Our Trees be referred to staff and the Environmental Advisory Committee for further review.
Thank you. And would someone like to second that motion? And that's seconded by Councillor Toms. Is there any discussion on Councillor Claire's motion? Okay, so I will call a vote. I'll ask for all in favor of referring it. And that is unanimously passed. Thank you very much, Robert, for your delegation.
Can I just possibly just respond to some of the comments? And thank you for the motion. I wasn't thinking of a complete pause. It's more pausing enough to give the opportunity to do the review so residents can make an intelligent choice. But
Yep.
with respect to Councillor Andrews, I fully understand the fears people have about dangers. But with all due respect, the science doesn't support the dangers you seem to be alluding to. I appreciate that people may not want to take any risk, but the science with respect to the low-level radioactive waste, which included the arsenic as well. I mean, those studies by the CNSC did not ignore the arsenic. Don't substantiate it as being a serious risk. So that's the science. But I understand a lot of people have concerns, and I respect those concerns.
Okay, thank you. So we did have a motion, so thank you very much. So, no, it's okay. Thank you very much. And just a reminder to the audience, there will be a comment period. So at that point, anybody can comment on any of the delegations tonight, and I welcome you to come up and do that. Thank you, Robert. And so moving on, I now welcome Ian Angus and John Cullen on behalf of the Rural Focus Group regarding available revenue sources that are not being utilized to reduce the Ward 2 tax levy. Mr. Angus and Mr. Cullen, you have requested an extra 5 minutes to your delegation, and so you now have 15 minutes to speak. Please press the purple button.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Deputy Mayor, councillors and staff. Thank you for hearing us. And thank you, CAO and Treasurer, for giving us their permission to come here tonight. As before, there are a great many people here to speak with you, and I am merely their presenter. Tonight, they are speaking to you about neglect. They are speaking to you about neglect and how they are being treated as an appendage of and not as a responsibility of this municipality. Our Rural Focus Group has come together because of the ongoing neglect of Ward 2 values, interests, and mere presence by Port Hope. So far, our attempts to get attention have failed, and we're tired of being ignored and neglected. There has to be a recognition that Ward 2 and its values are a responsibility that must be taken seriously. Neglect is manifest in several ways, and although in some cases it may not be overt, in other ways it clearly has to be intentional. Take, for instance, the derelict recreation parks in Welcome and Garden Hill. See for yourself the broken baseball fences, the boarded up canteen in Welcome, where nobody could be bothered to put away the tennis net for the winter. See for yourself the missing park gates and the imprint where the field house and canteen once were at Garden Hill. See for yourself the tennis court that is now signposted as a fire department training facility. The story is the same for the Vincent Massey Memorial Arena, a Hope Township joint venture with Hamilton Township. When repairs were needed, the decision was to abandon the relationship with Hamilton Township instead of doing the repairs. And then what happens when we voice our concerns? These voices are neglected too. Early last October, several of our members met with your CAO to explain the unacceptable issues concerning Ward 2 and the neglect of its LLRW fund and infrastructure. At the time, we pointed out several ways to reduce the current unsupportable taxes, and these ways included using the grant in lieu received each year from the new LLRW waste site in Ward 2, using the non-interest revenues from the LLRW fund, and using the grant in lieu from Wesleyville. It is only reasonable that these grants in lieu be used exclusively to reduce Ward 2 taxes. That's where they're located. Receiving no response, and after Ward 2 councillors were refused their 2 votes on the budget, Rural Focus Group members met with your Director of Corporate Services and asked for a clear description of what matters relating to taxes, planning, and boundaries means, so that everybody knows when the second votes can be used. And no response to that either. On December 19th, our members met with the mayor and the CIO to follow up on the lack of answers. Again, we have experienced a complete lack of response. So we're here tonight to remind you that this neglect must cease. And it's essential that these issues be addressed before any decision is taken on this year's taxes. So let's talk about the Ward 2 LLRW fund for a minute. Why have you neglected that too? 10 years ago, it amounted to almost $11.5 million. Since then, 20% of the interest earned, totaling almost $750,000, has been reinvested. So that means the fund now totals $12.25 million, right? Wrong. In 2014, Port Hope claimed the fund amounted to only $10.3 million, and in 2023, Port Hope claimed the fund amounted to only $10.6 million. To help you understand what's been going on, we have charted the conflicted values. They're on the screen. The tops of the red shaded areas are the fund values reported by CIBC. The bottoms are the values reported by Port Hope. The anomaly in 2022 is where the opposite occurred, and Port Hope's value exceeded the value reported by CIBC. And I would point out that the valuation dates of both the CIBC and Port Hope are one and the same. The fact is that Port Hope has undervalued the fund for 9 out of the past 10 years, and the difference, about $1.6 million in total, where did that go? And then, what has happened to the non-interest revenue in the fund? For your information, it was $141,256 in 2023 and $216,740 in 2024. Where has it gone? That has to be an example of gross neglect. Also, it is totally inexcusable that Port Hope should misrepresent the value of the fund in the first place. But let's move on. Somehow. Let's talk about another form of neglect. Let's talk about the missing line in the Port Hope budget data, which, by the way, your accountant says was prepared on a modified accrual basis, while the Public Sector Accounting Board reporting requirements require a full accrual basis. So our first question to you has to be, why are you not providing us with a proper accounting? Take a look at the budget. In the materials, we have given you a copy of your financial statements for 2023. Take a look at page 24. You will not find any surplus from previous years on the revenue side, nor will you find any deficit from previous year on the expense side. Why is this serious? because both of these lines are required by the Municipal Act. Section 290 says that the municipality shall treat as estimated revenue any surplus from any previous year that resulted because actual expenses for the previous year were less than the stated in the budget. Any prior year deficit must also be included in the next year's budget. Fair enough. And what do those previous year surpluses and deficits amount to? I'll show you. Do my best anyway. We've prepared some graphs. The first graph shows the amounts of amortization in your budgets and is cash raised as part of the tax levy. That's the amortization in the 10 years. The next slide shows the amounts by which the tax levy exceeded the amounts actually spent, and is the excess of revenue over expenses in page 27, but it is also known as annual surplus on page 2. The next graph, the third graph, shows what was spent acquiring capital assets. You find that page 5. In other words, this is cash spent on buying things. So when you put these three graphs together, you see how much of the annual surplus is left over after buying things. The top of the blue-green shaded areas show the operating surplus together with the amortization and may be described as total cash receipts available to be spent on capital items. The bottom of the green shaded areas shows the operating surplus. The bottom of the green shaded area denotes the capital purchases made during the year. So where the capital purchases during the year exceeded the cash available, the resulting deficit is shown in red. Now, Section 290 requires that the green shaded areas shall be used to reduce the tax levy for the following year, but this did not happen. Similarly, the two annual deficits were required to be added to the tax levy the following year, but that didn't happen either. So the question is, how much has Port Hope profited by this omission? How much have Port Hope taxpayers been overtaxed as a result? And the answer is $12.5 million, which is over half of the entire 2023 tax levy. Municipalities are not supposed to make a profit out of tax collection. So why is this occurring in Port Hope? So let's have a look at the mill rates chart. There you will see how the tax rates accelerated starting in 2014. You will see how tax rates accelerated when the surpluses were absorbed instead of being returned. In this chart, you will also see what the Ward 2 taxes should have been following the trend line from amalgamation. And the middle line there, the blue line that goes down a bit, that's Hamilton Township. And it is noteworthy that when we asked for a tax reduction, which is due to Ward 2, we have asked for less than we perhaps could and perhaps should be asking for. So we need answers. Answers to questions that are simple and straightforward. Answers that are readily available. Regarding our grants in lieu, how much are the grants in lieu for the low-level waste facility and the OPG Wesleyville property? It's time we knew what those were. And we need both of these to be used exclusively to reduce the Ward 2 levy. Regarding the Ward 2 fund, will the non-interest revenue in the Ward 2 fund be used to reduce the Ward 2 levy? Will there be an accounting of all the money missing from the LLRW Ward 2 fund? Where has that money gone, and what is to be done to bring it back? Regarding the annual surpluses, we need to know if Port Hope will accept and abide by the requirements of Section 290 of the Municipal Act. We need to know how much is Port Hope indebted to its taxpayers. 12.5 million may not be the correct figure, best we can do, as a result of not applying its annual surpluses to subsequent years' tax levies as required. What are you going to do about it? Will a third party of some sort be called in to correct this situation, or will you be making the corrections yourself? We also want to know when that the March 18th report that you commissioned a month ago will be available prior to finalizing the 2025 tax levy. And we want to know if you will be matching the Hamilton Township mill rates for its Ward 2 taxpayers. Similar taxes for similar services. So please, we would like to have the answers to all the above questions before the end of April. And tonight is a good night to start. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you. So I will go ahead and ask council if they have any questions or comments regarding the delegation. Councillor Less.
I think you've been put in a lot of time and effort. Don't know how accurate your figures are, well, wait a second. So I get one side of this story, and I'm supposed to jump, right? So we've got a consultant that's working with us to take a fulsome look at all aspects. We've had this for 3 days, so we need a little leeway on this. So we're doing our share. We're going to do what is right. But are we going to match mill rates? No. We can't. I look at your, I have a tax bill here for 2025 from a resident for a different matter. And I look, and your school taxes have gone up 9.63. This is a Ward 2 bill. Your county taxes went up make up 35.58% of your tax bill. The rest is the municipality at 54.71. And then I look at some of your charges. I look at OPP went up 16% more too. Who pays for that? Everything's gone up in price. I look at your low-level radiation fund in 2014, and it was $10,313,000. In 2023, it's $10,604,000. The interest you earned on that money was paid out over the years in tax reductions to you. Yes, Yes.
Sorry, I'll just call order.
So
Order, please.
anyways, so those are the things that, we're saying to you and you're saying, no, no, no. Well, we'll let an independent come in and tell us what they think. So I know it's not the news you want to hear, but
Okay, I'll just call for order.
Yeah.
Thank you, Les.
you're welcome.
Councillor Clare.
Thank you to whoever just shouted that from the audience, because that actually leads right into the comment I was going to make. And I think that's very clear to me. It is clear to me that the group that assembles each time you've come to do a delegation, Mr. Angus, I do believe they trust you more than they trust us. I think that's a problem, and we need to address that. I think that's a problem that has developed over a very long period of time. For those that are here tonight, though, I do want to take the opportunity, though, just to mention a few other meetings. You mentioned some meetings that you felt were not fruitful. But as far as to those feelings, I understand it takes time to address a feeling that has built up over the course of 25 years. I would say this council has spent more time engaging about this topic than any other topic in the last 6 months. And I know 6 months is a blip in the course of 25 years. I'm not going to speak to what's happened before that, but there have been 3 open town hall meetings at Canton organized by Councillor Darrell that have garnered participation from 5 out of the 7 members of this council, including 3 Ward 1 councillors who took the time to come and engage with rural residents so we could better understand those issues. There has been a motion brought forward by Councillor Mink and Councillor Darrell requesting a fulsome review report to come forward so that we can all understand the full historical context around the double vote question. That report, my understanding, is coming forward in our May cycle. After your delegation in March, we commissioned a third-party review of taxation and spending in both wards so that we can all look at the same information and determine whether there is an inequity. And of course, if there's an inequity, I will speak for myself, I am more than willing to take a look at that. But we need to look at those numbers, and unfortunately, and I think probably fortunately, even though you don't, there's a low level of trust I can feel from some of you, I don't think you would want us making big decisions on the basis of an argument put forward by a single resident. We need to review those numbers and make sure that they are valid and then make our decision on that evidence. But I would suggest for those that are here, thank you for showing up. Please continue to show up. But I think we have demonstrated a willingness to engage. We've also had lots of individual meetings. I spent a couple of hours with you, as you know, last week looking at this. We are listening. You have our ear. If we don't take action, if these things don't materialize, by all means, come back, hold our feet to the fire. But I think, we do need a little bit of time to look at this. We're waiting more information. And for me, until I have that information and can make a more informed review and decision, I'm not going to be making any concrete decision regarding the questions that you raise.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council? Okay, so I have a couple of comments. So I agree with you, Councillor Clare. If we have this many people from our community coming here to Town Hall more than once, we as a council need to respond. And it doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter. If this is the interest of the community, we are obligated to respond and resolve whatever that issue is. I have here in print your questions that you asked at the end of the delegation, 11 questions. So we're not in the position right now to answer these questions. And I have had some comments from the community after the last meeting saying, did council come up with a decision? We make our decisions here. So we didn't go somewhere else and talk about this. So my question, I guess, to staff maybe at this point is, these questions that are asked, these 11 questions, how do we go about getting those answers? Do we have to make a motion, or can I just refer these to you? I think some of these questions are still outstanding from a month, and there's a couple new ones on here. So how can we get these answers at this time?
Thank you. That's subject to your, excuse me, that's subject to your consideration as council. Of course, referring back to staff with a request for answers to the information or answers to the question is one way of going about that. I didn't write down the 11 questions as they came. I do suspect, like you said, a number of them are being addressed through the report that you directed a month ago. But with respect to sort of an itemized response to the questions answered tonight, if that's what you're looking for, referring that back to staff with that request would be your option.
Thank you. So I'm the chair, so I can't actually make that motion, but I can obviously vacate the chair. But I think that you do deserve answers to your questions. I don't think that we can ignore those questions. So I don't know if I can hand this over, but if there's anybody else here that would like.
Yeah, if I can make a suggestion, nothing stops any citizen from asking questions of any staff member of anything. What I would suggest the easiest way is Mr. Angus can certainly hand them to staff and staff will get the answers back to them. Oh, sorry. I was saying members of the public are always welcome to ask questions of staff at any time. You don't need to necessarily go through council. So what I was suggesting is the easiest way is Mr. Angus can simply hand the list of questions to staff. Staff will get the answers and submit them back. No different from how any other question would be answered by the public. Same thing as what we do during question period.
Okay, any thoughts on that? Thank you, Councillor Todd, for that. I agree that that's one way to get answers. However, in lieu of the fact that there is such a large audience here today who's come out, so just to take a step back, I have attended some of those meetings that Mr. Angus is referring to, and I too was waiting from answers from staff. I won't say that for every meeting. I know Director Gilmer did have a meeting, and I was not part of that meeting, but there was, so some of those meetings were answered. Some of them, even myself, I did not get the answer. So I think the fact that there are so many people here interested in this right now, that I would prefer to put a motion forward directing staff to give the answer, and that way we do have that accountability. It's just my preference. Councillor Thomas?
I would put a motion forward directing staff to provide answers for the 11 questions on the sheet provided by Mr. Angus.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder? So Councillor Todd will second that. So the motion on the table is to direct staff to answer the questions coming from the delegation of, let's see, the Rural Focus Group regarding available revenue sources. Is that correct? Councillor Pearson.
I just want to say that I actually have a lot of respect for our staff, and I think our staff would have answered these questions without this direction. I don't think that we need to put forth this, and if you wouldn't mind, I don't believe that we would have had to put forth this motion. I can almost guarantee that our staff would have answered it, but to make everybody happy, I'm okay with it.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. I do agree that staff will answer those, but I think that it is with transparency and continuity that we do it this way, so that there is no confusion in the community of, did you get the answers? Yes, I didn't. No, you didn't. It's coming to us. We're reading the answers. We're validating that the answers are there, and we're all informed of the answers, and that way there is no. Any other comments? So there was a motion and a seconder, so I will ask, call the vote, all in favor. And that is carried. Thank you very much.
The return date for those answers, please.
I don't have a time for that.
Some of the answers are immediately available. We know that.
So
when
staff,
will they be forthcoming?
Staff has not had a time yet to review the questions in full form, so I would prefer to ask them on a possible turnaround time, but I haven't given them that that option to
Would
read these
24
questions.
hours be sufficient for 1.1? The answer exists, it hasn't been delivered.
Right. So, so we did pass the motion. I'll ask Councillor Clare if she has anything else to say.
Would it be fair to ask that staff answer as many of the questions as they're able to at our next meeting, which is the first Tuesday in May? The reason I suggest that, Mr. Angus, is because I think there are a lot of people here. I think there are also a lot of people watching from home and possibly going to watch the recording. My preference would be that these answers be provided publicly in a public recorded meeting, so that all of you may have access to those answers and are not relying on word of mouth or a telephone tree essentially to get that information, that it be provided to all of you directly in that public forum.
My question to you, you prepared to have us back en masse at your next meeting as well as this one and the previous one?
I'd much rather be looking at a room full of neighbors than empty chairs.
Okay, so the motion has passed, so we will pass those questions along. Thank you very much, Mr. Angus, for your delegation. So we're moving along, and we probably should have a break, but since everybody is here today, I'm going to move on to the public comment period, and then we will take a break after that, just because I want to move this along. If we have a break now, it'll take I think even more time. So it's now time for a public comment period. As per our procedural bylaw, the purpose of the public comment period is for members of the public to provide comments on items that are on today's council agenda. If you have questions related to an item that is not on today's agenda, please wait until
and come to you with their questions and deal with you positively. It's going to be on the grounds that you have solved the issue. The issue is that Ward 2 feels, believes, and has demonstrated to them daily that their residency doesn't really matter. That's what you have to overcome. That's what you have to deal with. And I respect the fact it's tough, and I respect the fact that it's in some ways very emotional. But we need to do this well if this community is to stay together. And if you can't answer the question, do you want Ward 2 to be treated respectfully? Then just tell us that. Let us know, and we'll make some other arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next person.
Hello, my name is Emily Marston. I'm from Wesleyville in Ward 2, and my comment is regarding the representations of the Rural Focus Group delegation. Some of what the delegation presents does reflect mine and my neighbors' views. We do enjoy a quiet, simple life, and we are not eager to see development change that. We also would like to see manageable taxes to allow us to live that simple life. But I'd like to request council and those present to remember the delegation is the same as me today, a taxpayer who shares the views of some other residents. They are not elected, and they do not represent all rural residents. I'm concerned that the ongoing narrative of low tax, low service being applied to all rural residents will overshadow the fact that there are a few specific services that many residents would like to see in the rural area, and they voted with this in mind. Our ward is large, and the geographic differences sometimes mean differences in needs and perspectives and opinions. Please do not forget to consider this as you decide and act on this issue. Please remember that many of my neighbors and myself in Wesleyville would like to see some very specific services related to waste management in our area. Regarding the comments made by the delegation as to the use of the Wesleyville funds to reduce Ward 2 taxes, I'd like to expressly state this does not represent my views as a Ward 2 resident, especially as a Wesleyville resident and a key stakeholder in the Wesleyville project. I would like to see these funds used for their intended purpose by OPG, which is project readiness, and perhaps, if I can put in my own view, the protection of the natural area. Tax reduction was not the intended use for these funds when it was given by OPG. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. And the next person.
Hello, Larry DeFazzi from Hope Township. I've been here for 30 plus years. This issue has come up council after council after council. Now, I understand that you guys are new to this and you're now trying to deal with this issue. The thing is that staff has known about this for decades. So These answers should have been figured out a long time ago. The answer should be there sitting and waiting for us, right? It should be simple answers. How has this gone on for so long? And there's been so many issues and nothing's been done about it. That's, we're pissed. I'm sorry, but we're pissed. If this was the first time that we were bringing this up to council, I could understand, hey, we're brand new to this, okay. But this is not the issue. Like, this has been going on for decades. It's got to stop. If you can't rectify this, we need a divorce, right? We're trying to keep this simple and straightforward. Here's issues. Deal with them. Not go, yeah, okay, we'll look at it. Yeah, we'll look at it. No. Deal with it, please. This needs to be done. There's another issue that's coming up tonight, which is the strong mayor issue. Now, the problem is, I don't consent to this. I didn't consent to a dictatorship. If the mayor's going to have all the power, then what the hell are we doing with you guys here? Right? You are there to represent us. Now, if the mayor is going to be doing everything, we're going to live under a dictatorship. Hey, then get rid of all of you guys, and we're going to have a dictatorship. I didn't vote for this. I don't consent to it. And there's a lot of other people that don't. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
My name's Bill Bickle. I live in Ward 2, but I grew up in Ward 1. And we've been asking some of these questions for many, many years. And I thank you that this council is listening differently. But I think there's more to it. I think more is required if you're going to try to rebuild the trust between the two communities. And it's going to take more than just the council asking a bunch of questions or the staff answering a bunch of questions. So I would like to recommend that you do something bigger than just refer these questions or get them answered. This is the trust decline between the two wards is deeper than between the residents and council. It's even between the two wards and the residents. And so when we were fighting this in 2013, many of us felt like we were just second-class citizens and we weren't being listened to, and so on and so on. And so the difference in the two communities has to actually be looked at. This is bigger than dollars and cents. This is community. And when Ward 2 residents say they don't want the same things or be treated the same way as Ward 1, it's a little bit like Canadians saying they don't want to be Americans. It's not saying to Americans, we hate you. It's just saying we're different. And Ward 2 residents are different than Ward 1 residents. So when Ward 1 residents say, well, you're just all part of the same group, please stop saying that, because that erodes trust. So I encourage you to do more than just look at the numbers and do some deeper trust building. Thank you.
Thank you. And are there any last comments for this portion of tonight? Okay, so then I will take I'll call a break. We will come back at, I don't know how many minutes we need. We'll say 8:30. Yeah, 8:30. Thank you. So welcome back. We're moving along with the agenda. So item number 6 is correspondence. We don't have any. Next is the consent agenda, adoption of minutes. Items listed under the consent agenda are considered collective as one motion. Council members may request that specific items be removed for separate discussion, deliberation, and action. The consent items are listed on the agenda. Would any member of council like to remove any of these items for separate discussion? Okay, so I am seeing none. So I will read them. So 7.1, council meeting minutes of March 18th, special council meeting minutes of April 1st, special council meetings minutes of April 2nd, committee of the whole meeting minutes of April 3rd. And I need a mover and a seconder for those minutes. Yep. So I will ask Councillor Andrews moved it and Councillor Pearson seconded. All in favor? And that is carried. Next is consent agenda, advisory committee and board meetings. Would anyone like to remove any items under this consent agenda for separate discussion? No? Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder to receive this item for information? Moved by Councillor Toms, seconded by Councillor Adam. And I will ask all in favor, and that is carried. Moving on to number 9, items for consideration. Report CS-06-25, re-update on audio visual upgrades in council chambers. Does staff have anything further they would like to add before we consider this item?
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. So the report that is in front of you today provides an update to council on the status of this project. I know that is something that you have been asking and something we wanted to provide you. It is, the report includes information on the work that has been done so far with respect to the audiovisual upgrades to council chambers. This is an important project. We know it's important to you, it's important to staff, and it's important to the community. It is also something that we don't want to be dealing with. We don't want to be dealing with outdated technology, so we share your frustration with that. But we also want a solution that is long-lasting and fiscally responsible. The report is outlining the steps that we have taken so far and what we plan to do to finalize the vendor. Staff will continue to update council members on the progress of this project, and our recommendation tonight is to receive for information.
Thank you very much. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on this matter? Thank you. I just have one question, actually. I think it's fabulous that we're updating this, long overdue, and it'll be a great improvement. As far as the connectivity in the streaming, have we evaluated whether we're good with that and will support an updated system, or
Do you mean the internet connection?
That's correct.
That would be part of the RFP. One of the consideration of that would be part of the RFP.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so if there's no other comments or questions from council, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Les, seconded by Councillor Darrell, and I'll call the vote. All in favor, and that is carried unanimously. So item number 9 is the report CS-07-25, Re-Engage Port Hope, new community engagement platform. Does staff have anything further they would like to add before we consider this item?
Sure. I don't remember me. I'm going to move to the podium.
It's a good thing we're getting a new AV system. Through the chair, the report that I've provided you is an overview of the change in vendor and the rebranding of our digital community engagement website. Engage Port Hope is what it will now be called, instead of My Port Hope, for those familiar with our current site. It will be launching tomorrow, and it'll allow for more advanced visual and engaging ways to connect with our audience through community engagement. In the report, I highlighted a few of the new tools available to us with the new site and vendor. And they include opportunities for a new budgeting tool, mapping and placemaking engagement tools, visioning tools to help with collective brainstorming and ideation, among other enhancements to the site. So a media release will go out tomorrow once we have the site live and it's checked and it's linked up with the rest of our pages. And at the end of the report, I also highlighted some of the additional enhancements that we've made to communications in general. So I won't go through all of that with you, but there was quite a list. So we provide that to you for your information.
Thank you very much. And I will ask council if they have any questions or comments. No? Okay. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Adam.
Sure. I just want to say, I know that the park revitalization and stuff is already moving over to that, so I'm looking forward to this going live.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you for moving on to something that's more user friendly as well, and I think the community is going to greatly appreciate it. So thank you.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No, so I just have a comment, and sorry. So again, and I agree. I think that this is great. I look forward to it very much, and I also appreciate what you said at the end of the report is listing some other initiatives and things to reach out to the community. And I think that might be something important to hear maybe annually or in whatever way to show the community that we are trying these different avenues as well and seeing if they work to communicate. I think the web, the World Wide Web, is a universe of information, and it's very difficult now for many people to even navigate there. So I think having all these options is great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. We'll consider that as an annual report.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing else from council, did I ask a mover and a seconder? Okay, so a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Clare, seconded by Councillor Adam, and a call all in favor, and that is carried unanimously. Report 9.3, CS-08-25, re-provincial proposal to expand strong mayor powers to Port Hope. Does staff have anything further they would like to add before we consider this item?
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. So as all of you are aware, on April 9th, which was last Wednesday, the province announced its intent to extend the strong mayor powers to 169 municipalities, of which Port Hope was one. So the purpose of this report is to formally notify council that staff have received correspondence from Minister Flack regarding this legislative proposal. So, you know, I said it in the report, and we are one of 169 municipalities that have been named. And as of right now, staff are reviewing the details of the proposed legislation, which is intended to be enacted on May 1st. So we are working on bringing back an information report on the strong mayor powers. We're also working with our integrity commissioner to see if we can set up some training for council. This is new. It is unexpected. The technicalities of the legislation are still unclear, as the municipalities that have dealt with these powers have all taken different approaches to dealing with them. So it is something that will take some time for us to understand. We will do our best to get you all of the information that you need and ask for your patience as we move through this proposed legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there anything further that anyone else would like to add on this matter? Councillor Clare.
And you'll forgive me, I'm going to read some prepared remarks because sometimes when I feel strongly about things, I can ramble. I would like to thank the clerk for bringing forward this report in such short order after the surprise announcement last week. I look forward to receiving the additional information and advice as outlined in the report and that you've just spoken to that will help us navigate these changes to our decision-making and procedures should these powers become official on May 1st. In the meantime, I believe that we know enough about these powers from the information in the provincial statement and from observing how these powers have been used by mayors elsewhere to understand that they pose a threat to our democratic decision-making and to our ability to rely on impartial, professional advice from our senior staff. As such, I would like to affirm my opposition to the extension of these powers as expressed in Council Resolution 48/2023 that was passed unanimously by our council on September 5th, 2023, which I believe is now also up on the screen for you. I would also be prepared to bring forward a motion this evening officially affirming that position of council should there be an interest amongst my colleagues, as this will be our last chance to be heard on this issue as a body before the strong mayor powers become law on the 1st of next month.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Les.
Councillor Todd made me aware that today is the end of the consultation period, so whatever we say now is mute. It's going to happen in some form.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so Councillor Clare has put a motion.
No. Sorry, that's the motion we already passed.
Right, but didn't you want to have a motion to reaffirm it, or is that a thing? I'm not too sure.
I'm not seeing that there's necessarily an appetite at the table to take any further position on the matter, but I do think that our position was clearly stated when we passed this motion in 2023, and I hope that residents can take the time to read that, and so you can understand where we were on this issue prior to even knowing that they would be extended to our community.
Thank you. I do have a comment, and that is that, with the mayor not being here, she did issue a statement, and I have had a lot of questions from the community on my opinion about this as well. So I do appreciate Councillor Clare bringing this forward, this previous motion, because us as a council, even though the official comment period is closed, there is an opportunity for us to reaffirm publicly our position on the matter. So I do, I'm not in a position to second it because I'm chair at the moment, but I do support your wanting to bring it forward just to reaffirm it. Any other comments, Councillor Less?
I think we're all going to have a lot of comments in the future on this, and right now I don't even know what questions to ask because there's so much packed into this, or to use the same word over and over again. But I'm concerned for us now as a council and for our mayor, and then I'm very concerned in the future that how people that we elect as mayor in the future are going to treat this type of legislation. So yeah, we're probably all on the same page, and I guess when you elect somebody, you have to trust what they say they're going to do, and they better do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other comments from council? Councillor Todd.
Yeah, my only comment is, certainly the motion that we passed before still holds up, and I look forward to the report that comes forward because this conversation is just getting started, and I'm sure council will have more to discuss when we have more information in front of us, when we can actually speak to items and issues, and we will find our way through this as it goes. So I'm confident in the council as we do this.
Thank you. Any last comments? Okay, so the recommended motion is to receive this item for information. And can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Todd. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is also carried unanimously. Moving on to 9.4, Report DS-07-25, Northumberland County Official Plan Amendment, Status Update. Does staff have anything further that they would like to add before we vote on this issue?
Good evening. Given that this was a bit of a long meeting, I'm going to briefly talk about my report. In terms of a context, this report provides an overview of all the amendments to date by the county, Northumberland County, the status, where the county is in this process, and what are the next steps. I would like to note that some municipalities choose to undertake their official plan review dealing concurrently with all policy updates like growth and management, natural heritage system, agriculture system, etc. And they present them at the same time to the public and to their council, and their amendment is adopted as one comprehensive document. Other municipalities choose, like Northumberland County, choose to deal with a series of amendments for each distinctive component, and hence that's why we have amendment number 1, 2, and 3. With that context, I would like just to add a few comments on the 3 overarching themes for all the 3 amendments. The process, or how this amendment start and end, is the same and is stipulated in the Planning Act. The timeline number of years that you may have noticed that each amendment has gone through and why. I will comment briefly on that one. And last, what are the implications of these county amendments for our municipality? So the process, just a general overview, is the same. They have a consultant that they retain, the county. The technical review commences. Then a technical advisory committee was created by the county with representative by all local planners of the municipality. I have been a member of this advisory committee since the start in 2018. Then county launched the public consultation process. They created a project page of Join Northumberland. At Northumberland Next, they conducted a number of open houses and public meetings. 2 of them were in our municipality as well. County staff, after this process, presents the draft amendment. County council adopts each amendment by a separate bylaw. Then Ministry of Municipal Affairs Houses is the approval authority for the county amendment. And they submit those amendments to the ministry for review and approval. So this is the process for all the three amendments. Regarding the comment number 2, you have noticed from my report that these amendments have gone through a lengthy process, some of them spanning 6-7 years. The reason for that is because they started with a policy framework that was in place at the time, but since late 22, the province has unveiled several policy and legislation proposal. Furthermore, the repeal of the growth plan and the approval of the new provincial planning statement in October 2024 have necessitated further analysis and policy reviews of the previously adopted amendment, like the natural heritage system that was adopted in 2021, and then it was brought back by staff and it was endorsed by County Council, or draft amendment regarding the growth management. My last comment will be that what are the implications of this amendment for our municipality? As per the Planning Act, once all the county amendments are approved by the ministry, each municipality, member municipality in the county, is required to update their official plan for consistency with the upper tier, because we know the Northumberland County is our upper tier. For Port Hope, what that means is an official plan review to address all the changes and updates made to county official plan, and those are mapping updates and policy updates. And also we'll also incorporate our own policies as needed to guide future development in our municipality. Once our official plan is approved, then an update of zoning bylaw is required. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Thank you very much. And is there any questions or questions or comments from council? No? Okay, so I have a couple. Okay, go ahead, Les.
I know that this was fluid and it was being developed over a number of years. Is it applicable now with what we may have happening to the west with OPG?
In my report, it was noted that the Director of Development Services will come soon with another report to talk about the extension of the urban area settlement. And at that time will be a comprehensive report, and we'll provide more information to that regard. Obviously, having the OPG proposal will impact the council decision.
And Councillor Clare.
I'm going to be looking at you when I say this, but it's not actually directed at you. My comment is, thankfully, we've come a long way since this process started. At the outset of this process, we were facing a situation where recommendations were being brought forward without having any consultation with the municipality of Port Hope. We, in fact, had to request to the county that they do a public meeting here in Port Hope to discuss the urban boundary change. So the fact that we're now sitting here in having a very different conversation where they're actually actively deferring that decision until we can have a fulsome discussion here and make our interests as a community clear, I think is a wonderful development. And I'm looking at you, but I'm actually speaking to the county staff and council. And I appreciate that this process is now unfolding in a very different way.
Thank you. And any other questions before my question? Okay, so I have a question about the agricultural review, and it says that there will be further discussion later this year. Is that correct? So a few of my comments, and it may be outdated. Yeah, I looked at a map quite some time ago that showed pretty much a blanket across the rural area would become agricultural, including Westview Park was agricultural, and that's there were big residential lots that was on a former gravel pit, I believe. So that was really concerning for me. And there's a lot of, if that's still the map, and I admit I haven't looked at it as of recent, I think there may be some people in the rural area who have some concerns if all of a sudden their properties transition from rural to agricultural, because obviously there is some zoning changes, but potentially some permissions where people can now have chickens in a hamlet type area, or something like that. So can you tell me, first of all, what is the community engagement or notification that of the agricultural changes? And is that map that I saw, is that still valid or has it been updated?
That is a very good question. And so we had it was in the summer of 2022 when county initiated the first round of consultation and the mapping that you have seen. We as staff provided comments, and given also against the backdrop of the policy framework in our comments, we have received on the staff additional mapping, and we have provided further comments earlier this year. And it is my understanding that the county is reviewing all the comments from members of municipalities, and soon will issue the updated mapping for public consultation and will conduct open houses. So the mapping you have is outdated, I can say, and we have requested county to have another open houses in the municipality.
Thank you. And then just a question to go along with that, if these properties do become agricultural, would the tax structure change now from rural residential to agricultural? Because I believe it's not a one-to-one tax percentage, is it?
Without going to the specifics, and we can look into the mapping when it gets launched online, but mostly our comments were the redesignation from prime agriculture to general agriculture. I don't recall those to rural residential. It's mostly this redesignation of the general, but I'll be more than happy to look at it and talk to the residents if they have any specific question about their properties.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, because I do think that's very important that the rural communities should know if their zoning is changing and they don't get any surprises. Okay, any other questions from council? Thank you very much for the report. Okay, so with that, the recommended motion is to receive this item for information. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Adams. Call the vote. All in favor? Councillor Adams. Thank you. Okay, so moving on, that was carried. Committee reports and recommendations. 10.1, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of April 8th, 2025 regarding intermunicipal task force on housing and homelessness regarding Northumberland Housing Solution Workshop summary and recommendation. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Okay, the recommended motion is listed on the agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Tom, seconded by Councillor Andrews. And I'll call the vote. All in favor? I hope you're going along with my first and last name. All right, yeah, okay. Trying to cover all bases. Okay. Next, the recommended motion. Sorry, 10.2. Motion from Committee of the Whole meeting on April 8th, 2025 regarding presentation by representatives of ICLEI and report WE-04-25 regarding Port Hope Sustainable Future Community Climate Action Plan. Is there anything anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Clare. I'll ask for all in favor, and that is carried. Is there any opposed? No. One opposed? Okay. 10.3, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of April 8th, 2025 regarding report ES-06-25 regarding PHAI tree removal / tree planting process. Is there anything anyone would like to add before we vote? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Adam, or sorry, Les, seconded by Councillor Adam. I sort of lost my place here. Call the vote. All in favor? That is carried. 10.4, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of April 8th, 2025, regarding report PS-05-25 regarding Fire Station 2 replacement project update. Is there anything anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Councillor Clare.
Thank you. I want to say off the bat, I did speak to this item when we met last week, and I do want to thank Director Williams for taking the time to engage with me about this since our last meeting on a number of occasions, and providing some clarity on some of the concerns I raised in potentially not a super articulate way at our last meeting. That said, I do still have some questions with regards to the proposed design plan. To be clear, not about the need to replace Station 2, which has been the primary focus of our discussions to date, but rather about some of the elements that go far beyond being a like-for-like replacement project. This council has not yet been provided the opportunity for fulsome review of the proposed design plan, which does include other elements, including administrative offices, an additional bay, for example, that exceed our needs based on the current roster of admin staff and current fleet of fire apparatus. And I would consider it to be a mistake for us to tacitly approve the new design at this anticipated cost prior to such a review. I also hope that when it comes time for us to decide whether and how we move forward with the project, that we can review the opportunities for more sustainable building approaches to ensure that we are aligning with the recommendations that will be coming forward with the Community Climate Action Plan, especially those with potential significant cost savings for utilities and maintenance over the life cycle of a new building. I do understand that this is being attached to an existing facility, which would likely preclude us from having a net zero fire station like the one that just opened in Peterborough. However, there are a spectrum of options available to us that I don't think have yet been fully examined. In my view, this discussion is also better suited for budget season at a time when we can properly consider this project and potential allocation of infrastructure funding transfers in the context of other priority projects stemming from our approved asset management plans, which will be coming forward for approval in the 2026 and 2027 budgets. Finally, I would like to say that I believe there is a need for a more consistent and standardized process for how we move forward with projects stemming from our various master plans. It had been my understanding from my time on the Waterfront Riverwalk Working Group and through the development of the proposed Community Climate Action Plans that all recommendations contained in those plans would still have to come forward for separate approval. In this case, seems to me that the design has moved forward on the basis of some recommendations in the Fire Service Master Plan that are distinct from the need to replace Station 2. And it seems to have been assumed that those recommendations have already been approved, which is a different approach from the one that we use with other master plans. I think, therefore, that a standardized process would be helpful to both SLT, the senior leadership team, and council in planning ahead for how information will come forward and navigating decision-making about these larger projects in the future. I don't think that this is a discussion for us to get into today, per se, but it is a process piece that I do intend to raise with the permanent CAO once we have one in that chair. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Councillor Clare. Any other comments? Councillor Less.
The design may change drastically depending on the grant amount of money we get.
Thank you. And Councillor Todd.
Thanks very much. I'm just going to echo my comments from the last time when we discussed this, which is I found this report, I'm in support of replacement Station 2. What I found confusing about this report is it talks about the replacement project when it's really asking about a grant. And so I think we had the conversation around, do you need council to commit to the project in order to move forward? I believe the answer we've come up with is no. I would still be more comfortable, if we removed the last paragraph of this, that council commit to ensuring, and simply give our blessing on the grant, and that staff will come back and discuss it in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Oh, sorry.
Do you want him to talk again?
No, yeah, a little bit more, please. No, you can go less.
The reason that we had to put the paragraph in was to demonstrate during the grant process that we have the financial capacity to apply for the grant.
Yeah, that was the belief at the times that the grant required it, and I think we've learned since it's not a requirement.
I didn't know that.
Okay, yeah. And if I could get confirmation from staff, I believe that's the true statement, is it not?
Through the chair, my understanding is that we cited the requirement for the grant application directly from the grant application. So that was actually, the verbiage was changed from making my initial request for commitment to funding to the verbiage is in the recommendation now. So it reads now, council commit to ensuring the financial capacity for funding construction. So my initial request was commit to funding for the construction of this project starting next year. Now it's just ensuring that we have financial capacity for the funding of the construction costs associated with the Station 2 replacement project contingent on the funding received from the grant. So I would suggest, as Councillor Andrews says, this is the first step in several that are going to require this project to continue to move forward, and the application of a grant is requirement of the application of the grant does require exactly what it outlines in that paragraph I just cited. So
Thank you very much, Councillor Clare.
Yeah, we did go through this, and I can tell you that the wording of there is a question on the application form, which we read out loud, I think, last week. It's a yes or no question. Do you have the capacity to fund this? Should this project move forward, yes or no? And I would just suggest that I think echoing Councillor Todd, my concern is when we pass a motion and the word commit is expressed there, it sounds like tacit approval, which I don't think we are yet prepared to provide for the total budget and the full expanded fire hall project. And, there are many questions in that application that you'll have to circle a yes or no answer to. None of them are included in our motion. So I would say, staff are perfectly capable to answer the questions on the grant application without it being included in a council resolution. And if we are simply just supporting moving forward with the grant, then that paragraph 3 is not required.
Thank you. And I just have a couple of questions, and these questions came from the discussion from last week. And I did speak to the director or the chief about this. So just 2 questions, and I think they kind of go along the lines with Councillor Clare's comment. Is the applicant that we chose, Barry Bryan, why did we go with that particular architect or designer without the RFP process?
thank you, Chair. So the contract was awarded to BBA in 2023 when the design process started, based on a number of factors. The main one being they're the ones who designed the police station. So the inherent historical information about that project and the original fire station project was utilized as a cost-saving measure. So we did procure them without going to tender through sole source procurement that was approved by the CAO.
Thank you for that. And the second question is regarding attaching it to the police station. We just had one review of whether we will have a Port Hope Police. We don't know in the future where that will go. So I think this goes along the line with exactly, I think, with what Councillor Clare was getting at, was that we're making decisions for today without really thinking about, will we always have Port Hope Police there? Potentially, maybe we want to sell the building, or maybe we want to move municipal staff into that building. But we don't have those conversations when we're making these significant decisions about our buildings and assets and capital projects. One of the worst case hypothetical situations I can think of is we go ahead and build a new administrative center before thinking about the succession plan of that building, and we just kind of look at each one of these buildings in that moment without our long-term vision. So with that, do you foresee any risk in us attaching the building to the the police station at this time, or would you recommend that that is actually a benefit?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. And due to the recent policing study, that actually did put a pause on the design aspect of it. As soon as that the policing study was initiated by Northumberland County, a pause was placed on the design of this project because of that exact issue. Not knowing where we were going with policing in our community obviously could directly impact this project and the building needs and availability. Once that policing study was completed and council passed their motion in relation to their position on the Port Hope Police Service, the design continued. And then the grant opportunity presented itself. So that's where we are today. There are a number of benefits, a number of cost-saving benefits that we've actually done a number of in-depth studies on in relation to electrical servicing, natural gas servicing, generator requirements for that location. Not only the fact is the municipality owned the land, so it'd be no cost associated with that, but the historical work that's been put in place to ensure that services and other aspects of the project could sustain this project are all cost-saving measures. We do have support from Port Hope Police because it would be a joint initiative because some of the facilities at the new building and the current police station will be utilized by both emergency services.
Okay, thank you very much. And Councillor Todd.
Yeah, I think I just want to rephrase my question because it wasn't about the wording that was in there. Does the grant require a motion from council?
No.
Okay, that's where I was heading. Does it require a motion from council committing to whether or not we have the capacity? But it does not require a motion from council to say that.
Through the chair, my understanding is that it does not at this time. I brought this to your attention before we've got into the actual application process. We've started to gather all the information to start that process. I haven't gone through the yes and no questions yet because until we got to this step in the process, we haven't got that far into the application. So as far as I know, it does not. That's all I can comment on right now. I would like to just make a comment, and I know this project has a lot of history within the municipality, and it's, I came here in 2022, and this is one of the first things that I was tasked with by the CAO was to get this project underway. I hear the sentiments of all councillors at the table, but just to bring it back, in 2021, when the $150,000 was allocated for the studies for this project, in 2023, when over $500,000 was approved by council to design this station, the station that includes all of the aspects that are included in the report in 2023. Nothing has been added. Nothing has been changed. This is what I put forward 2 years ago, and that's what we designed based on the needs of our fire service. So I'll be very clear with that the needs assessment was completed. The design was completed based on the assessment that we performed, and the design was undertaken. And we're at 40% design right now. Like I said, we've invested, and we'll be investing over $650,000 in this, in this design, at this location, that was approved by council. I need the next step, and the next step is to fund the project. So the grant funding will assist with that, hopefully, and I am hopeful in our grant funding application. But when I come here in the next couple of months, I'll be providing an update. And hopefully we'll have a clearer picture of where we stand when it comes to the provincial support for this project and us moving forward here. So.
Thank you for that information. And Councillor Clare?
Yeah, I just want to say I don't share your view, Director Williams, that when we approved budget to move forward with the design process, that is equivalent to approving a design. When we have approved budget for other design processes, those designs have come to council and have been approved, as often with options, right? Think about the Walton Street reconstruction. Council of the day was provided with 3 options to look at as part of that design process. And I think that maybe is the missing piece here. And I agree, you're right, that the fact that this would be more than just a Station 2 replacement and would include administrative offices was included in the capital budget report that we looked at. Administrative offices, that could mean 3, it could mean 40. Looking at the design and making it a determination based on that design, I think is still needed because, until we see, and you've shared the the proposed floor plan with me. So I've seen a little bit of that, but that hasn't been part of the opportunity that's been provided to council as a whole. And again, I think looking at those details is still an important step. And maybe that's the sense that I have that we've missed something, which again, doesn't preclude you moving forward with the grant. It's just why I have a hesitation about any words that could be construed as tacitly approving a design that we haven't really had a fulsome review of yet.
Thank you, and through the chair, I do appreciate that. I can only say that based on the numerous reports brought forward and the information that I put forward to try to inform council of the decisions when I was asking for the money to design the project, we had a design in mind, and when the designed budget is approved, we started the design. So I don't know the expectations of council when we approved the design for the building that we weren't going to design it and then spend that money. So I don't really, maybe we're talking about that gap in the process, because I had the design, I know our needs. The designer and myself, we've worked to identify our needs and design a building and build the budget and cost estimates we put forward based on all that work that has been approved through funding through council. So I'm just confused, to be honest, is the questions are being asked now. We've already committed to the funding, and we've already spent that money of $650,000 on this design, and now we're asking, is it the right design?
Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thanks very much. And appreciating that conversation. I think this is where I would like to decouple two things. This report speaks of both the grant and the funding of the fire station and the development of the fire station. I would love to be able to decouple those two conversations so that this is purely about giving approval to go write the grant. And for me, the way in which we can do that is to remove that paragraph, which is, you've got our blessing, write the grant. If we get the money, we'll be talking about all the stuff that comes with it in the conversations when we're talking about the design or the build and the funding of the station. For me, the simplest way of doing that, remove that paragraph so that is just clean, that let it be resolved. We're going to write the grant. You're going to come back. We're going to talk about it in the application process, pull the rest out, and then we're not talking about the finances of it. That way we decouple the two.
Thank you. And Councillor Clare.
I'm going to try to make these my last comments. I would also say this to you, Director Williams. This is not a criticism of you. It is I think, a lack of a established, commonly understood process for this. And also, please be forgiving of us a little bit, right? When we approved the budget for that design, we approved that as part of the 2023 budget, right? And we were elected in 2022. It was our first budget. We also were early in our understanding of our infrastructure deficit and the really challenging financial context that we are in as a municipality. And again, yes, we approved money for the design, but at no point have we approved funding the project, because we haven't yet looked at those designs to determine whether we feel we are able to move forward with that. Again, this is, you were new, we were new. There's been 4 CAOs in the course of the couple of years that you've been working on this, and that's why I tried to focus the brunt of my remarks there on the need for there to be a clear and consistent process, which would, again, I think, eliminate the frustration you're now experiencing, where there's a disconnect. At the end of the day, though, we're the ones who have to make the decision to spend $11 million, right? In a context where we are facing budget crunches, where there's very serious concerns about rising property taxes, we have to be able to make that decision and live with it. And so when it comes to there being a disconnect between you as a member of staff who feel like you've provided the information we should need to feel comfortable moving forward, and us and I'll speak for me saying, I don't feel I've had the information I need to make that decision. At the end of the day, I'm the one who has to make the decision. I'm the one who has to feel that I have the information I need in order to make a good decision on behalf of the community. So I think we just have to figure out what that is, so that you feel comfortable, you're not experiencing the frustration. We get what we need to feel comfortable moving forward. And if we can learn from this and use this to develop that process so that it's consistent moving forward, then I think we'll be in good shape for future decisions.
Thank you. So I'll just make my last remark, and then hopefully we can move on from here, and I'll consider Todd's recommendation. But I think what Claire is saying, I do agree with you, and I don't want to make it just the fire station, and that's why I talked about the succession of our plan for our buildings and the future, because there's been various properties and buildings in town where we have made decisions without looking at all possible options and saying, do we want affordability? Do we want sustainability? What do we want in our buildings? Do we want options to expand? All of these top conversations we don't have when we're making these, or I have never really had when we're making these decisions. So that piece does feel missing to me as well. And it's the process, not that's what I feel it is. So moving on to Councillor Todd, exactly what did you want to amend?
In fact, I think Shrishma's going to bring it up on the screen, which is exactly what we have in front of us. Remove the paragraph that council commits, seeing as we don't need to, have a motion in play, but take out that paragraph of that council commit just to make it clean, so we know exactly what it is we're talking about. We're putting in a grant. Staff will come back afterwards.
So that is the amended motion put forward by Councillor Todd. Is there a seconder for that, Councillor Clare? And is there any further discussion? Councillor Adam.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask maybe the finance director or both of the directors, if we remove that, do you think that there is a chance that we will not get the grant, or we'll get less of the grant by not having, because all we're really doing is ensuring that we're committing, that we have the financial capacities. We're not committing to the finances, just to the capacity. So do you think that it would change the chances of getting like the maximum grant? So I really know who to ask the question to. Sorry.
I'm going to try. So through the chair, just to come off Councillor Clare's comments about the yes or no, does the municipality have sufficient funds for this project? I'm going to have to ask my friend here before I check that box, to be quite honest with you. Like, I mean, do we? Yeah, and I would suggest if we say no, we will not get the grant. Unequivocally. We say yes, we do, then they would proceed. So I mean, if we only have the two options, then I will want to confirm that the municipality is in a position to potentially fund this project, because we need to before I make the application.
So in terms of the question of do we have the financial capacity, right? So let me just paint a high level picture of could we, right? It's $11.2 million facility. We're asking for a special grant of $3.6 million, and could have funding, although don't have it funded, right? But we can apply development charges to $4.1 million. That leaves $3.5 million to be funded. We're doing it over 3 years on our two main consistent annual infrastructure funding sources, being Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund and the Canada Communities Building Fund, combined $2.6 million. We do that over 3 years. We have $7.8 million available to fund the remaining 3.5. So can I say, yes, we have the funding capacity? Yes, we do. That being said, right, we've used that money for the past 3 years and had no fire station involved. There are other competing priorities for that money, which is, why in conversation with With the director, we're looking at spreading that out over 3 years. That gives us more options to be able to fund without monopolizing an entire year. And also to look at, timing of interest rates and different things. Because quite frankly, one all-in approach is to fund this with no impact to the tax levy, right? The development charge side still requires, funding, because that we're not going to bring in $4.1 million in development charges. That's going to be years. However, at the same time, this project is really a primary candidate to take out a debenture, right? Interest rates have come down. We're better to take a large project and do one debenture than to slowly do different debentures and be trying to manage, a whole menu of different debentures over time, and potentially be forced to take one out at a high interest period, right? And we've been working over several years, many years, really, since we took out the debentures for the Jack Burger and the police station, 2014, to not take on any more debentures, to let our debenture rate come down. And as you know, interest rates have been, have gone up quite a bit. So we fared quite well. That's been a great strategy. We're now at a point where we can and really should be considering taking on some debt. I really want to make sure we're doing it at the right time, not trying to do a shorter term decision where we're avoiding, certain impacts and certain optics, and then being put in a position where we have to take out a debenture to do something that is required. So a lot of things to think about. We're not here today to decide how we're going to fund it. But I wanted to paint you that picture of, yes, we can. And really the converse side is we have the capacity to take out a debenture for the entire thing, even if we didn't have this infrastructure funding. So certainly on multiple fronts, we have the financial capacity to do this. I have no hesitation providing, the confirmation to our director to put in that grant application. So coming back then to the other part of the question, certainly we apply for grants all the time that we don't come forward to council and ask for a specific commitment, right? Admittedly, I'm not able to right now, I don't have the capacity to do all the things that I'd like to do, and I haven't read the specific, grant. It's why I gave the advice, on a significant one, it is a stronger application typically, and I didn't know what the specific wording was. So, it's not going to hurt to turn around and say, we're going to, we're committing to funding this project. But to your question, I don't think it's, I don't think it's going to make, a difference, right? And it's still not budget approval, right? I was clear about that. It's still not budget approval. We'll be, getting in and looking at that. And there's a certain level of commitment every step we take, right? Whether that's identifying that we've picked a site, whether that's identifying that we're going to move forward on the design, right? Every step of that is a further commitment. So to answer your question, yes, we can financially, we have the funding capacity, and I don't think that we have to have that section in.
Okay, so, Councillor Les.
Look, if we have the financial capacity and it's not going to harm us to put this in, and it could improve our position, why would we take that clause out? Doesn't make any sense. I would put the clause back in and leave it like we agreed last week.
Councillor Clare.
I also, just want to point out, though, that what it says there is not that we have the capacity, it's that we commit to ensuring. And commit and ensure are very strong words. And my concern is that, again, that they suggest that we are tacitly approving moving forward with funding this $11.2 million project. And that's not something that I think is appropriate for us to do outside of that bigger that fulsome review and outside of the budget process.
We had this discussion 2 weeks ago. We spent an hour wordsmithing it. We came up, yes, we did. We spent an hour wordsmithing it, came up with these, and then 2 councillors voted against it. So if you're going to vote against it, vote against it. I say put the vote up there with the original proposal.
So I'll ask the clerk if you can help at this point. We got a mover and a seconder for this, right?
That is correct, Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor.
So we would have to have a vote on this matter at this point before.
So
doing
from a procedural perspective, that is one option for council. The other option is to withdraw the motion and put forward a new motion, if that is the will of council. Excuse me, if that is the will of the mover and the seconder with respect to this particular motion. But if that is not something that they wish to do, then yes, this motion would have to be voted on.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm kind of sensing the mover and the seconder is not going to withdraw. Okay, so then I will put this motion as is to vote. I'll ask a vote. All in favor? Okay, so we have 3, so I'll ask all opposed. 3. So that is defeated. So now we need to carry on with the original motion or an alternative. Is that right?
Madam Mayor, Madam Deputy Mayor, my understanding is that a decision needs to be made with respect to whether we move forward with the grant. Okay. 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 So if you want to look at the full motion as it was posted on the agenda, that is also an option of council at this time as well.
Okay, so I see Councillor Clara has her hand up again.
What if we were to reword the third paragraph to say that council confirms that we have the financial capacity to fund the project should it move forward? So we're confirming the financial capacity. We're removing any language that suggests in any way that it is a commitment. Would that satisfy my colleagues?
So Councillor says it would satisfy him. Is there any other discussion about the new update? Okay, is there a second? Is that are you putting that motion forward, Councillor Clare?
Sure.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Toms. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder. We basically kept it the same, but we put in the word confirmed.
Took out commit and sure.
Yes, there we go. So I will call the vote for the motion as is, and I'll call all in favor. Yay, there we go. And that is carried unanimously. Okay. And let me find it. Okay, so moving along. 10.5, motion from Committee of the Whole meeting of April 8th, 2025 regarding report DS-06-25 regarding Economic Development Strategic Plan 2024 report. Is there anything further that anyone would like to add before we vote on the matter? Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Todd, seconded by Councillor Adam, and I'll call all in favor, and that is carried. So moving to notice of motions, I have none. Bylaw, consent agenda. Bylaws are passed by consent agenda. Would anyone like to remove a bylaw for separate consideration and discussion? All right, so we'll be passing them as one, but I'll read them. 15-2025, removal of holding H5 provision at 6710 Ganaraska Road. 16-2-25, amend bylaw 24-2023 regarding municipal emergency management program. 17-2025, letter of agreement with the Ministry of Transportation regarding dedicated gas tax funding. And 18-2025, letter of agreement with the Ministry of Transportation regarding dedicated gas tax funding. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Less, seconded by Councillor Darrell, and I'll call the vote. All in favor? And that is carried. It's now time for question period. Remember, the purpose of question period is to make inquiries of council related to matters of municipal business. Please note, this is not meant to be an avenue to ask questions to staff. Please direct your questions to council members. I also want to highlight that if your questions are operational in nature, they may be best answered by a member of staff following the meeting. Contact information for our directors and senior staff is available by the door. If you have any operational questions, please ensure to contact them. We ask that you please identify your name and ensure the purple button is pushed and the microphone is on before speaking. We will start with councillors. Any councillors have any questions? Councillor Clare.
I'm actually going to ask Madam Deputy Mayor if you would use your discretion to allow me to make a comment instead of a question.
Sure.
Thank you. And that is, I know every time we wordsmith motions like this, it's very tedious and there's always blowback after the fact. And I appreciate that. I wanted to just share from where I sit. This is a lesson that I have learned in these first couple of years of serving on council. There have been motions passed by this council that have not yet come to fruition because there is different opinions on what the motion actually meant. And that including between members of council, between staff and council, the wording of these motions actually is incredibly important. And I've developed a really healthy appreciation for that as I have become frustrated on one or two occasions about things not materializing because there has been confusion or different interpretations of the words. So if we sometimes appear to take too much time or we go through, it seems very tedious, please bear with us because it really is being done in the interest of absolute clarity and common understanding so that we can move forward with things quickly in a way that really reflects the will of the council and represents the interests of you.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. Any other questions from council to council? No. Okay. So I will ask for the media, and I don't think there is any here tonight. And now questions from the public. Please come forward.
Good evening, Larry DeFosse, Hope Township again. My question is,
Sorry, could you state your name and
yes, Larry
address again?
DeFosse.
Oh, you did. Okay, thanks.
Yes, Hope Township. My question to you is, I have a great from reading the information on this strong mayor law that's being implemented, is that it gives the mayor the authority to override council. But you guys are here for a purpose, and now that at the mayor's whim, she can override council to get stuff done that she wants to get done. So my question to you is, are we going to have anything from our existing mayor, never mind future mayors, which is going to be a contentious issue in itself, but are we going to get anything from our mayor through you guys that she is not going to be overriding, using that power to override you guys? You're here for a reason. You were hired to represent us. We, as the public, deserve some kind of a clear understanding of where this mayor stands and what kind of a commitment she's going to make to us. So that would be my question to you.
Thank you. So that's a very good question. And our mayor did make an official statement saying, yeah. So perhaps that's something that we may even maybe put in print, maybe. I know it's on the website, but for those who may not have that, perhaps another way that we could have that maybe in print in the office downstairs or something, so that that statement is very clear to the community.
Thank you.
Councillor Adam?
And I'd just like to say that I do have complete confidence in our current mayor. We have spoken about it, and she did make that announcement as well. I feel like she will work with the council as she has stated, and I do have a lot of confidence. You never know who the next mayor might be, though.
That's the issue, is what goes on from here. Right?
Thank you very much for the question.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, Ed White, Mill Street, and unfortunately, I have several questions. You just answered one of them. The next question I would like to ask is, where can I find the motion that you passed in 2023 on the mayor's, strong mayor's bill, whatever you want to call it, at that point? Where can I find that? Or could you put it up somewhere, like on the website or something like that, so that we can, that I can find it? Or, you know, mail me an email I'll never see.
Okay, so I'm just getting that it is on the website.
Oh, it is?
Yes, may be difficult to find, but we can also provide that copy for you. But all motions that are passed are on the municipal website.
Okay, well, I have great difficulty there. So the next thing I was wondering about, I don't know if I heard it correctly, but we approved, if I can find it, we approved $250,000 at some point for a design on a fire station that we haven't even approved that is going to get built. Like, I don't understand the where is it? $250,000 spent out of 2023's budget for a design. And now, according to all the wording that I'm hearing from these motions, we haven't even approved the project. But we approved $250,000 to design. If you know anything about me, this is something that went way, way back, that I got involved in a project that was funded but never approved initially. So did I hear it right? Did I hear correctly that we approved $250,000 for a design project on something that we haven't even approved, that we're going to officially do? There's been lots of talk about it. Lots of talk about moving the station and the need and everything else. But is that what I heard? Is that right?
I was prepared to answer that, but so I will attempt to answer that. So that was one step in the process, yes. And I think there's different requirements along the life of this project and the approvals, and that was one step of, and that's sort of the questions that Claire is bringing up at this point.
Well, that'd be like me saying I'm going to buy a new car. Maybe I need it, maybe I don't. I'll just give somebody some money. I don't understand that. How do you approve a design for a project that at that point wasn't even approved to be a project?
And Councillor Claire?
I think
Come on now.
unfortunately, Ed, it wasn't 250,000. It was actually significantly more than that. So just to provide that clarity, it was 650,000, not 250,000, which I know just makes you feel worse about it. But let me explain. So moving forward with the design, until we have the design and know how much that design is going to cost, right? We don't know whether we are going to approve moving forward with that design, which doesn't mean we're not approving moving forward with replacing Station 2, right? It just means, but no, that this particular design, right? So this, until you have, it's like saying, you get an architect to design you a house. Doesn't mean you're going to pay for it if it comes back and their design is not something you can afford or doesn't actually meet your current needs or whatever. This is the process. Yeah. And we committed to moving forward with the design, but you're right. That doesn't mean that we've approved moving forward with the project, but we wouldn't have moved forward with the design if we weren't, I think, moving forward with a project to replace Station 2. The question is whether this design is what we're going to move forward with, or if there are options or tweaks that need to be made to make it something we can move forward with, right?
Does that mean you're going to have to spend another $650,000 on another design?
Okay, so I think you've made your point, and I think you've got the answers, but I think I will just
Okay.
reiterate what Councillor Clare said, that in any infrastructure project, there is usually payments as you go along during different phases of the project. So this payments during the initial phases have been made, and there's just questions about what we want the end to look like, but it doesn't mean that we're not moving forward with the project.
Okay, so last one, if you don't mind. There was a lot of talk here about the Ward 2 tax thing and what was going on. There's a lot of people here. I did talk to a lot of people about what was going on and what their beef was. A lot of it came down to respect is what it came down to. Now, as a country, we have seen in the last little while what lack of respect means. When it was brought up that the parks in Ward 2, fences were falling down, sports equipment wasn't taken care of, buildings were falling down or closed. To me, that in a nutshell says what respect means. That's why the people are upset, because they look around and they see they're not getting the proper stuff. If that was Ward 1, what would the outcry be if the buildings were being closed, there was no washrooms, if there was fences that were dangerous and stuff like that? I think we got to look at more. I never liked Ward 1, Ward 2. I liked the municipality of Port Hope. I like that idea. I get what the people said tonight about being different, okay? I understand that. But this business of not keeping up the equipment and the infrastructure and whatnot, that would not be accepted in Ward 1. So I would like to see, I would like to ask, basically, I don't know whether it's Works or Parks and Rec, but why did this happen, or why does it happen, or what's going on?
Thank you. So, Councillor Adam?
Thanks, and I appreciate that. And I also appreciate the fact that we're transitioning over from the My Port Hope, because I could have brought up the design of the new Welcome Park, because this is something that has happened for a long time, and we are addressing it. And we actually have a full design of the Welcome Park to redo this. So we are actually looking at that. It's gone through the PRC Advisory Committee. We've gone through a lot of different design on it, and it was on the My Port Hope, because it's also gone through public. But unfortunately, until I guess tomorrow, when we launch that next website, we won't be. I can't bring it up in front of me right now. But we have actually looked at that, and I completely agree. There are some parks in the Ward 2 area that need to be addressed, and we're working on it.
Okay, when I was privileged to be on the Parks and Rec Committee, there was always an agenda for the Parks and Rec. And at the beginning of the year, we had to set up what our priorities and goals were. And at the end of the year, we had to account for whether or not those things were successfully taken care of. Are the parks and whatnot in Ward 2 on that agenda? That means that they get priority because they're on that agenda over other stuff. So are they on that agenda?
So the Welcome Park is actually not even just on that agenda. It's already been designed and everything. We've already been working on that. Next step will be to eventually bring it to council for approval through budget. So we're in that process right now. The next step will be for budget approval with council.
But the other parks are on the agenda, not just Welcome Park, but
Currently
one-
the Welcome Park.
the ones that they talked about.
Currently the Welcome Park. Yeah. Yes, there's other maintenance with other parks and everything, but currently the Welcome Park for a redesign.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Mars Barrick from Hope Township. I'm wondering if you have, for the fire station, I'm wondering if you have taken into consideration a few things. I'm in Ward 2, and I'm exactly 10 kilometers from that station. So that puts me in a lower insurance rate for fire. Taking it almost 2 kilometers away, that's going to put me into a much higher insurance rate. Also, are you taking into consideration that the land apparently was donated to Ward 2 and it was built by Ward 2? So in effect, you're stealing our our fire station. And I'm just wondering if all that has been taken into consideration.
So as far as the property of Station 2, so I'll answer that question. That has been a question that I have asked a number of times. I'm very aware that that property was donated and that the station was built and by Ward 2 residents and funded by former Hope Township. So that is something that my personal opinion, I can speak for myself, is that we need to figure out what we're going to do with that building. Boarding it up, in my opinion, is not an option. We need to figure that out, but we're not at that point yet at this time. As far as the insurance, I can't speak to because I don't know where you live. I don't know your insurance policy, but that is a topic that we have discussed.
Well, it's exactly 10 kilometers is what I was told by my insurer, that if you're farther than 10 kilometers, the rates go up. Yeah.
Yep. So, and then as well as Garden Hill, you're more than 10 kilometers?
Oh, I would think so.
Yeah. So I can't speak to that, but that is something that we have considered and we do have information. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
We were provided with a very helpful visual by Director Williams with regards to this question, and I'd be happy to show this to you after, so you can see whether you fall in. This visual uses 8 kilometers because that's what we understood was the standard for most insurers, but this shows sort of who is within the spheres and the difference between where those spheres are if you're, if the station were to move, and I can show that to you after the meeting today.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, so before, if you don't mind, just pausing for a minute, I think Director Williams had a comment regarding the last question.
Through the chair, thank you. Just in relation to your comment, I did provide a very detailed overview to council due to the number of questions that we received. So we had our GIS team actually perform some data analysis to identify the number of residents that would be affected by the shift of the current station to the 55 Fox Road location. Based on the shift, we identified that 42 residents would be affected. So 0.2% of the municipality's population would be affected. They'd be outside of the 8-kilometer boundary. Now, not all insurance companies recognize yours is 10, some are 8. What I would suggest for all residents who have that concern is going to the Port Hope Fire website. We have a very detailed Superior Tanker Shuttle accreditation page, which provides a certificate you can provide your insurance that speaks to the services that we can provide, the amount of water that we can provide your property. And if there's any questions in particular to your particular property, please feel free to reach out to myself. And if required, we can provide you a letter as well.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that information. Next question.
My name is Dale DeMario, and I live in Campbellcroft. I have a question regarding the strong mayor powers. These days, when we do an inquiry on the internet, the first thing that usually comes up is an AI-generated response. And I recently did
ask the question, has there been any evaluation of Ontario's strong mayor power? And I would just like to read you some of the responses, because these are supposedly generated out of whatever information is available out there. And I hope that when you go to consider this, that you will include some of the criticisms that have been identified through this kind of a inquiry. So let me read this. Supporters of strong mayor powers in Ontario argue that these powers can help accelerate the implementation of key shared municipal provincial priorities. Critics, however, contend that the use of strong mayor powers can create a toxic political environment, undermine the democratic process, and lead to minority rule. They go on to say also that critics argue that strong mayor powers can lead to a lack of genuine, consistent engagement with residents, and can be used to bypass local opposition to development, potentially violating democratic norms and traditions. The Ford government's extension of these powers to large and fast-growing municipalities is seen as a way to transfer political responsibility for the housing crisis to mayors, potentially leading to long-lasting and deeply damaging repercussions for local democracy. In summary, while strong mayor powers are intended to streamline governance and address provincial priorities, their implementation has raised concerns about democratic accountability and the potential for minority rule. So I hope that you will consider that as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. There was no question, but thank you for that. Next person.
Will Ryan, Ward 2. These are just two comments. I feel it'd be an interesting research project to understand the cost and if it can be accomplished of being able to use larger community spaces such as the Capitol Theatre for certain meetings that end up attracting a large audience. There's a level of frustration that exists because of the fact that the space is inadequate on certain occasions. So my suggestion is look into seeing if there's another way of having a remote equipment that then means we're not turning people away. Now, the other thing is I'm very interested in history, and I'm going to draw a parallel. The tea tax in the US contributed a great deal to their having the American Revolution. And I don't know really where Ward 1 and Ward 2 stands, but there is a certain level of dissatisfaction, and you don't know how this is going to grow like a snowball or not. But with the fire hall, I think it would be wise to consider both, is it the right location for Ward 1 alone and both wards still being together, because this is a considerable expense, and it would be a shame if it doesn't suit both scenarios.
Thank you for that. And I think just to follow up to your very first it was a comment, but could have been a question about another location. I think once we did have a council meeting up at the high school, I believe, last term of council. So we did do that once, but thank you for that suggestion.
I've attended two tonight and a previous night, and there were a large number of people turned away. And if you, as we all do, feel that participation in community and community involvement is important, it's discouraging not to be able to be party to the important parts of how things are resolved.
Thank you. And Councillor Clare, did you have a comment you were about to make? No? Okay. All right. Any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening, Dan Janes at 3191 County Road 10, and welcome, Ward 2. I have a comment and a few questions in regards to the strong mayors in the police station or the fire station. And I'll try not to ramble on about it. First, my comment, if you will. As a resident for around 30 years in this community, and having been a landowner and a homeowner in both Ward 1 and Ward 2 for a culminated time of 13 years, I do want now, even as a Ward 2 resident, to say thank you to this council and staff, as seeing past councils and past staff roll in and roll out. This staff and council, in my opinion only, is one of the most responsive, most active, and most respectable council that I've seen as a homeowner. Not necessarily in my time here, but as a council. You've been handed a handful of problems that have been passed on generationally. You've dealt with the pipe problems in town. You've dealt with water issues. You've dealt with response problems. And I think, as a resident of both wards, at some point or another, you're owed that. You've done an exceptional job at what you've been handed. So thank you. In respect of the Strong Mayors Act, I know it's all uncharted waters for a lot of us, and there's going to be a lot of questions coming forward, and you may not be able to answer this question. But if it's my understanding, we have a alternating role of deputy mayor. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that because that was not a position voted for, or nobody applied for that position in the last term?
We do not have deputy mayor by vote. It is appointed by council. As far as I know, in recent history, that's always been the case. This council decided to rotate it, which was their choice.
Okay, so my follow-up to that is, do we know any procedural bylaws or anything that will fall down from the Strong Mayors Act? I'm not going to speak about things we don't know in pertaining to the mayor, but will the Strong Mayors Act affect the role or translate powers through to the deputy mayor in positions of replacement, coverage, or anything like that? Do we know any of that yet?
I believe, as Port Hope is written, our deputy mayor does not have the same authorities as a mayor. We're here to, the policy or procedures for a deputy mayor is very minimal in our municipality.
Thank you. Okay. Another comment I'd like to say is, we the people asked the council and the staff for a little bit of clarity about actions pertaining to the OPG information sessions. I'd like to say, as I was driving into town today, I appreciate the new signage at the corner and Welcome, identifying so clearly what's coming up for us, and we have no excuse to come back and combat against you about the lack of knowledge there. Thank you. I do have a question about the fire, in regards to the fire station and its considerations. It's been well known for a lot of years that there will be a replacement eventually, and how the replacement will come about is what we're worried about. Has there been any fundraising or donation platforms administered or started or talked about in the past, now current, where I feel if there isn't, we're a little bit reactive based on a response now? There's been a lot of hard work by your director here, and he's been thrown into this subject pretty harshly. Can we establish something for a donation platform? Can we start that ball rolling? Maybe not for this design, but as a grand scheme of donating platforms and plaques and fundraising for that station, if and when it comes?
So I don't have a direct answer for you, but that's a great suggestion, and we'll take that suggestion away. Thank you.
And we talk about the effects that a potential project of OPG could have on our community later on. But just another scenario, this municipality has been extremely well at repurposing buildings. A fire station was once the library, so on and so forth. I think some considerations could be had that I believe the completion of the Port Hope Police Station in 2016 at that time cost roughly $4.5 million for completion. I know times have changed, interest rates and everything like that. They're only going to go up. Costs are going to go up. But if you take it in comparison and take the years of growth away, it sounds to me like a police station was cheaper to build than a fire station. So the land that's kind of been talked about for the fire station, could it not be in consideration in time that a new police station be built? I know that's fresh because it was only done in 2016, but the lands are there. There's building space that you would already be attached to. There's an outbuilding for vehicle storage. Just maybe we could take into consideration not building another fire station toward the west, toward Wesleyville eventually, but maybe utilizing the space there eventually. Kind of a question.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I think that, you know, all of these future decisions we need to really get ahead of, absolutely.
And my last one would be, with consideration and not knowing the future of this plan, and the lands being donated by, I believe, the Kellogg family back in the early 70s, mid 70s of the completion of that station, would council take into consideration at that time of a decision, maybe repurposing that building more for a training facility, a subsequent training facility for the fire station and fire services?
I think for that building, I think we need to have, like, that's a great suggestion, but I think we need to have all options on the table. And my personal opinion is to get input from the community as well on what the future is for that property.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm coming off a cold, so I wanted to microphone. I've got questions, gang. Sorry about that. Let's start with two. I had most of my questions were for the mayor, so I'll just have to go with us on the fly. And just a quick preamble, if I can. You guys know that I've been asking you for help with the Port Hope Area Initiative for 18 months. And it's something that's personal to me because I own a property that needs to be remediated. And I know all the good things you guys do. Les has been on for years. This isn't a hugging contest. I love Les. Councillor Todd with your A1 AI event. A1 as the U.S. Secretary of Education would call it. Councillor Clare is becoming National Treasure of Port Hope. Councillor Toms and Councillor Mink serve their community. Councillor Adam feeds people at Thanksgiving. Presents to the children. And I had a nuclear bomb dropped on me by the Port Hope Area Initiative on Friday. I think I'll lead with that. I've given them serious questions. And they wrote to inform me that I'd no longer be dealing with them, but I'd be dealing with a third party. And if I wasn't able to engage with the third party in a respectful and constructive manner, CNL would not proceed to remediate our property. A special circumstance that would be applied on our property as a result. Gang, this is insane. I need your help. And I'm sorry to say you haven't stepped up to the plate. So a couple of questions. First question. In December 2023, in front of this council, I informed the prior PHAI GM and council that I was unable to get his email address when I had a concern to voice to them. I informed him that even a senior executive said his email address was not available to me. You remember that the GM seemed surprised and said anyone can get his email and phone number. It didn't make sense to me that PHAI leadership could have such differing beliefs in their email policy when they've been on this for years. In my opinion, there was deceit there. I knew I was going to be in for a long haul with this right from the get-go. The mayor rightly asked the previous PHI GM what their policy was regarding turnaround times for emails and inquiries about the project. She asked if PHI was prepared to give a commitment within X number of days from when a resident reaches out to them. Residents could expect to get an acknowledgement with some information as to when they'll be contacted. Surprisingly, I found over the past 18 months that questions that I email to you, councillors, the mayor, are not responded to 90% of the time. Not even an email, an acknowledgement email. There's no world where that's acceptable. I mean, there's just got to, maybe it can't be done, but there's got to be some creative looking to see. You can't just have residents email and not hear anything. Whether it's, you know, I've said I used to be in business and there was out of office emails and maybe you say, we're not going to be able to get to you, contact a staff member that would be more appropriate perhaps, something, not nothing for months sometimes. So I'll ask, I don't know if the mayor's not here tonight, but I'd ask if someone here, the same question she asked them, because she knew that any organization worth their salt that cares about their clients or their residents would have a policy on their emails to respond. So what is your policy for turnaround times for emails and inquiries to the municipality, to council? Are you prepared to give a commitment that within X number of days a resident reaches out to the municipality, to council or yourself, that they can expect to get an acknowledgement with some information as to when they'll be contacted? I don't know if you have an answer tonight, but that's one question. If anyone wants to attack. And I know I'll say first, people have said, you give too much information. It take hours to read. Well, if I have 5 issues over a 10-month period and I send issue 1 and it's not responded to, and 2 months later I send issue 2 and I say, by the way, you haven't answered issue 1, the email gets longer. And then 2 months later I have issue 3 and say, by the way, you haven't answered 1 and 2, the email's now this long. So there's a reason the emails get long, because I've got questions that aren't being answered for 18 months. I've asked for your help. Last question, and I thought maybe I'd end it on this if I could get a meeting with the mayor, but the municipal website says residents can set up a meeting with council members or with the mayor. I've learned that, you know, the website says to email councilors, but I know they don't get answered. So I was going to ask the mayor if I requested a meeting with her, would I get that meeting? And I thought I might end it on that tonight if she was here, but she's not. So we're going to rip the Band-Aid off this tonight. Good news. I'm pleased to tell council that I have in my hand a letter informing my wife and I, who's not happy with all this, that our property is finally ready to enter the design phase of the project within the next few weeks to clean up the low-level radioactive waste from our property. This means we're in the latter stages required before the remediation of our property. Problem is the letter's dated September 20th, 2018. Last Friday, April 11th, 2025, we finally received the completed design package. In almost 7 years, the cleanup of her property had gone virtually nowhere. For 5.5 of those years, I had no idea what was going on with the project. I just trusted everyone that was doing what they said they'd do. It would go on. After years of waiting for our property to be remediated, in the fall of 2023, I decided to look at the project more closely. I was shocked at the misinformation, lack of material information that should have been provided to residents about the project, and decided to ask council, the municipality, and CNL to do better. When I began to look more closely, one specific piece of information that shocked me was that it appeared that contractors on the project had been changed between 2020 and 2022, the end of 2022. A significant and material change to the project that appears to have delayed the project during that time period. A change that I was completely unaware of. I think many of us would be unaware of to this day. While many of us with properties requiring remediation waited in 2020, 2021, and 2022 for work to begin, unknown to us, work on the project had come to a virtual standstill during those years. Last April, you may recall that Councillor Lesk, at my request, asked the PHEI GM if there had been a change of contractors on the project. You recall that? I was shocked when the general manager told the councillor that there had been no change of contractors. I knew you were all aware that indeed there had been a change of contractors. You had the previous PHEI GM, I think in December 2022, stand before you and said they had a lot of contracts with small companies without a lot of resources. You had an executive of AECL stand before you and say they've now brought in the big guns. January 2023, I think. Yet this information went uncorrected. I asked CNL numerous times during the year, the emails that weren't answered. Let's start talking facts. Let's start with the facts. Let's just start talking truth. Doesn't matter, there's mistakes are made, that's fine. But don't tell me not to believe what I know to believe is true. A month ago at the February 18th quarterly update by the PHEI, after 10 months of persistent questioning by me to the PHEI, the municipality, the council, the mayor, the GM finally acknowledged that a change of contractors had indeed occurred. And I would ask the mayor if she was here. It would seem to me that correcting misinformation put forward to the residents of Port Hope in these council chambers is a very understandable request. Simply a request to replace misinformation with fact. Why did you, council and the municipality, allow this critical and material misinformation of the project from PHEI to residents in your council chambers go uncorrected for 10 months? Is there any answer? Truly. And I agree with you.
Sorry, so
Is that a question? I'll try to, I think you've had a couple of questions in there. We've met many times. We've spoken on the phone many times. We've had email exchanges many times. Correct. So I think in part, as you and I have discussed at length, I think your expectation around the authority that this council has to direct CNL and how they manage their internal operations is a little bit out of whack with the reality of the authority we have over a completely separate institution. We do share a contract, right? We are partners in this project, but they are not subject to the rules and policies of the municipality of Port Hope. They are their own organization and they have their own policies. So in part, there's that. I think to your question around related to the municipality and a service standard and that, I would say I referred earlier this evening to things that haven't come forward because of challenges and ensuring the common understanding of the meaning of a motion. One of those examples is a resolution of this council directing staff to develop a customer complaints policy as part of a comprehensive customer service strategy. That is one of the ones that, because of different interpretations of the wording, it has not yet come forward. But I hear you, and that is exactly the kind of thing that I imagine would be looked at as part of a comprehensive customer service strategy. I think this council has said that we support that when we pass that resolution, and I know that staff in our current acting or interim CAO have been looking at that and about how that can come forward and seeking and what that's going to look like. So that is one thing, but you're right, it has been a long time since we commissioned that. As far as the correcting misinformation, there were countless things said at that very podium today that were not entirely accurate. We could be here all night nitpicking things. Sometimes people misspeak. I think you and I on that particular issue, it was my assumption all along that Scott Cameron misspoke when he said that. I don't think he meant to provide misinformation. Councillor Les did eventually ask the question and get that publicly corrected. But I think, there are times when you hear things are said, they may be misspoken. Someone identified themselves this evening as living in Ward 2, when in fact I know he lives around the corner from me in Ward 1. He misspoke. And that does happen. I think we do need to afford each other a little bit of grace when it comes to these things. It's not necessarily nefarious.
Thank you, Councillor Clare. So I just want to, okay, go ahead.
Talking too much, probably, right? So we can go on forward, to be honest. And I like the current GM personally of the PHAI, outside of dealing with him with PHAI. I like the communications director. Like all of you, there was a lot of political speaking in that, Claire. I moved here 10 years ago, never imagined I'd be here fighting the federal government. And I moved here because of the small town charm. We're a town of 17,000 people. We probably all live within 1 or 2 kilometers of all of you, everyone in town. We can speak truthfully to each other. I asked the question, why did the council allow it to go unquestioned? What you knew to be false, a material fact about a $2.6 billion project, probably the largest in Potosi. I don't know if the OPG is going to be more than that. Maybe it will. A project that's people have been waiting. Our backyard, we don't enjoy our backyard. I don't put money into the flowers or the trees. I don't have plan a family together that'll take 2 years for people to come over when I don't know what's going to go on. This is not inconsequential. This has been going on since 2018. We've been waiting for this. And they told me it would be done in 2018. And they said 2019. They said 2020. Then they changed to 23. Then they went to 24. Then they went to 25. Am I allowed to ask questions about what's going on and get truthful answers? And when I tell council that this material fact, that's a serious material fact, if you know that there's a budget discussion in here that's false, if you know that that financial presentation tonight that they're going to steal your money, you better ask some questions and tell us. And when you had heard that material fact, Claire, you can't say that they misspoke. I contacted him 2 weeks after. I said, are you sure you wanted to stick with that answer? He had to look into it further. You had to go down the hall to talk to someone that had been on the project 5 years to know that there was a change in contract, that they agreed, that they acknowledged a month ago. I'm sorry to be brutally honest. They've threatened not to do my property. Maybe when I speak up like this, they're going to go ahead and do it. I don't know. But the time for all this has got to end. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so I just want to make sure that we move this along.
Yeah.
So if you have any final questions or.
I do.
Okay.
I do. And other questions you can ask, just for example, I assume the people who Save Our Trees may be glad to hear that a month ago at the presentation, the GM said they've taken remediation of properties that may not be needed to be done if the criteria change comes through. They were planned for the next 2 years. They've now taken them off and they put them to future years. I've been asking them for a year. What are they working on those projects or on those properties? Because my property is way above those numbers. It has to be done now. Or do we have priority to answer what they're doing with those properties? Now he says 2 weeks ago. So they had those properties that may not need to be done if the criteria change comes through, planned for the next 2 years, that only now at the virtual last minute they changed that plan. We got to start asking some questions to these people.
Sorry, Councillor Todd.
I appreciate where you're coming from, and what I'm hearing, a lot of the questions, they seem like they're directed towards an audience other than us.
Towards who? Sorry.
Towards, like, they're questions for CNL, like why haven't they? Why haven't they? Why haven't they? And question period is really questions for council.
Appreciate it.
Questions that we can answer
Appreciate it.
about matters pertaining to the municipality. We have no oversight as to like you're asking. I know you're hearing me.
I know.
But what I would say is, if you have a question for council, then please let us know. And
It's not that I haven't put a lot of thought in this, council.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Now, last year, what I've said that you haven't given me any assistance, and I'll stick with that. What you have said is that you're going to hire a director of environmental services. I first came to you when I first there, and said that we should have a liaison for that for some reason we canceled in 2018, just when that homes became remediated for some unknown reason. And I found that the federal government should be paying to have a director of environmental services that we now have, that we didn't have at the time. And I know it's not all due to me, because I know Claire knew that at the time. I don't think many others did, maybe our former CAO, but not many others at that time. And now, a year later, because of asking that question, we have, and you told me for the year, wait till we get them, wait till we get them. This,
You know, and the
I'll have to
question
say,
there.
so 6 weeks ago, and I've told you this, you guys got an email from PHAI, and full of misinformation about how they dealt with me. You'd think that they did everything in the world and I was unreasonable. And Councillor Les, you know, forgive me, but you stood up and you said, I'll have to get to the page for that to try and move this along, that people go to PHAI the day that you received that email. I imagine you saw it before the meeting. People go to PHAI and they ask questions.
Cameron, may I just interrupt you? We need to wrap
this
up.
up?
Yes.
I've been 18 months. I'm asking the audience.
Yes, but this is procedurally, this is question period.
I'm
So
asking
it
questions
is,
along the way. I'm just giving context. I'm asking Les the question right now. I actually read the procedural bylaw because I anticipated this, and I don't see anywhere in there that I can't give some context. And Trishma has been great to me and always answers me, and how great she does on the work during the night. Can tell me what I'm going against on the procedural bylaw. I'm asking questions. I'm putting context to it. Where am I going wrong?
I just want to, so, you know, as the chair, this is the first time I've been in this scenario.
I believe I'm following the bylaw, unless you can point
Yes,
otherwise.
we need, as Todd had said, questions as well that this council can
I'll give
answer at
questions.
this time.
Okay. So Councillor Les that night, after he received the email, said to all of Port Hope, the CNL answers questions from the public, and they answer them consistently. And then you added somewhat consistently. I'm not sure what that meant, but and people do not accept their answers, and you have to put up with it. And CNL said some people are stuck on it. And so I ask, was it Save the Trees who've been asking the questions and are stuck on it? Have the CNL has to put up with? Was it me who was asking the questions that I can show you are not being answered? Or was it someone else that we were asking about? Or did you just accept CNL's word as gospel? And I don't fault you for that, because you should be able to trust them.
You go to the well often enough with the same bucket, you're going to get the same result. So unfortunately, what you are getting, is it fair? No, it's not fair. That CNL have dragged it out, have sent the letters they've sent to you, have disrespected what you've been saying. But we have this much to say
Councillor
about
Les,
CNL.
sorry to bother you, and I respect how you get right to the point, and you're the dollars and cents guy, and I appreciate that of you. If you had of 10 months ago gone to CNL and said, what's with this change of contract? Was there one or was there not one? Let's start speaking truth here. Let's start speaking fact. Why could you not have done
care
that?
about the fact
You
that
don't care?
No, I don't care that they said that they did or didn't switch contract. Who cares? That was 5 years ago.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Okay, so I'm gonna step in here. I'm sorry, but I'm hearing from council. It's getting heated. This is not the point of question period. Well, I would like to, I'm gonna actually call on my fellow councilors here, and here, I would like your opinion on question period at this point. Whether to proceed or whether would like to hear your questions in another form.
probably talking loud enough. I don't need it though. But I hope I get a meeting with the mayor and many of you, CNL if they want to, maybe they don't want to talk to me, and we'll go into more detail. You get the point, and I'm glad that the people here have heard tonight, and anyone else that wants to hear.
Yes.
And then everyone can make their own judgment.
Okay,
And
thank you very
Councillor
much.
Less, you can have your judgment, and I'll let the public have their judgment, and then, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, and Councillor Adam?
Yes, Cameron, I just want to say that I committed to you a while back that I would communicate with you and that I will continue to. I think I just answered the phone from you. What was it, last night, 2 nights ago? I don't know if it's all one day, but I do commit to continuing to respond to you and working with you on this, because I do feel bad for you. I understand you've been going through this for a long time. And I appreciate that.
I don't want anyone to feel bad for me. Acknowledge that I only asked Councillor Adam less than 2 months ago to assist me, and he went to the wall and assisted me, and 100%. And I only asked him 2 months ago. Les, I started with you a year ago. We've had a couple of conversations. And now you don't answer my emails. Todd, we had talks earlier. We were friends. We were in good, and I probably made some comments that didn't sit well with you. I
Cameron, I'm gonna close question period now. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to for the confirmatory bylaw. This bylaw confirms the proceeding place this evening and provides for formal adoption through a bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Adam, seconded by Councillor Todd. I'll call all in favor. That is carried. This concludes our business to be covered on today's agenda. We have reached the end of our agenda for today, and I'm in a position to adjourn the meeting. Thank you.